board will reconvene our board meeting, and we will go to agenda item number 29, approve recommendations on building partnerships to prevent, address, and seek an end to homelessness in San Diego. I'll turn it over to staff for your presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Fletcher, members of the board. Your board has taken a strong leadership role in addressing homelessness throughout the region, including using county excess property for compassionate emergency housing solutions. On October 11th of this year, your board directed staff to explore the establishment of new and innovative emergency housing solutions through collaborative efforts with private entities on non-county land. These efforts support the emergency interim housing and resources strategic domain of our county's framework for ending homelessness. Today, we're pleased to return with our analysis and options for expanded emergency shelter solutions based on your direction. With me today are Diana Beck, Director of our Office of Homeless Solutions, and Marco Medved, Director of the Department of General Services. And here to lead the presentation is Barbara Jimenez, our Community Operations Officer for the Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities. Barbara?
Thank you, Nick. Prior board actions from October 19, 2021 and February 8, 2022 set forth compassionate emergency solutions and pathways to housing for people experiencing homelessness. These previous board actions are related to current and future county-funded and operated efforts. For example, the Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities, HSEC, launched the first compassionate emergency solution in August of 2022 called Magnolia Safe Parking in El Cajon. HSEC, in partnership with the county's Department of General Services and a consultant, are evaluating other sites that are currently in various phases of development. To expand work already set forth, the board voted on October 11, 2022 to approve additional new and innovative ways to expand emergency housing options. Today's presentation provides the requested return back to the board on the following actions from the October 11, 2022 board letter. 1, explore the feasibility of purchasing sleeping cabins or sprung shelters for partner organizations to place on their properties and use as shelters for persons experiencing homelessness. 2, develop criteria necessary to site county-funded sleeping cabins, sprung shelters, or similar shelters at non-county properties. And 3, engage local private companies that have new and innovative solutions to address homelessness and explore private-public partnerships between the county and such entities interested and capable of providing innovative approaches to ending homelessness. HSEC partnered with the Department of General Services and the Department of Purchasing and Contracting to determine the feasibility of purchasing the sleeping cabins or sprung shelters. 2 options are presented today. In both option A and option B, Department of Purchasing and Contracting will issue an expedited request for bid to set up a vendor contract, which will take approximately 1 to 2 months. Partner organizations would be responsible for the siting process of their private property and ensuring that the site is ready for the cabins to be placed. This process could take a few months or longer depending on site's physical location and site readiness. For option A, DPC would select a vendor and establish a competitive rate for the sleeping cabins or sprung shelters, and then have HSEC issue grants to qualified partner organizations to purchase the cabins directly from the vendor. This approach ensures better pricing for the partner organizations, affords control to purchase and install the sleeping cabins or sprung shelters based on partner organization project plans and timelines, and helps them work directly with the vendor if there are any changes to their project. For option B, Department of Purchasing and Contract would select a vendor, then purchase the cabins and license them to private and partner organizations. This approach would require a signed agreement between the county and partner organizations, since cabins are purchased by the county and considered a county asset. In this approach, the county would handle storage and delivery logistics until partner organizations are ready to install the cabins on their properties. Since cabins would be financed by the county in option A and option B, they would be exempt from the zoning ordinance in the unincorporated area, and partner organizations would still follow applicable zoning ordinance within the 18 city jurisdictions. HSEC partnered with Department of General Services and the county's Department of Planning and Development Services to come up with the siting considerations. It is important to note that specific siting process and all regulatory items will be contingent upon the physical location of the site. Siting considerations provide some general guidance for the partner organization as a starting point. And once the partner organizations and locations are identified, HSEC and DGS would connect the partner to the appropriate review entities, get the siting assessment and process initiated. On November 29th, 2022, HSEC hosted 2 public stakeholder input sessions to solicit feedback, engage interest, and capacity. HSEC leveraged the stakeholder networks such as the county homeless sector, faith-based sector, regional community leadership teams, county contractors, regional task force on homelessness, and sub-regional alliances to identify potential partners and notify them of the stakeholder input opportunities. We also worked with County Communications Office to advertise stakeholder input opportunities via the county's social media and other networks. Overall, the information was center viewed by over 16,000 impressions, including 4,500 direct distribution. 2 public sessions were attended by 160 participants, and we received great input. Participants expressed their support of the effort to establish emergency shelters and their capacity to offer private land, but also identified the county's need to support ongoing operations and funding. Participants also identified other possible alternative innovative solutions to include shared housing, dorm style, 3D printed homes, purchase and utilization of existing homes, and the placement of cabins on publicly owned and unused land. Additionally, participants underscored the importance of early collaborations with respective jurisdictional permitting departments prior to project implementation to allow for timely evaluations and approvals in support of efforts to address homelessness. Apologies here. Today's actions request that the board find that the proposed actions are not a project pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. 2, accept the feasibility analysis for the purchase of sleeping cabins or sprung shelters for partner organizations to place on their properties for use as emergency shelters. 3, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to pursue one of the 2 proposed options to expand emergency shelter options. Option A, Department of Purchasing and Contracting to establish a vendor contract for partner organizations to purchase cabins directly from the vendor to set up their private properties or as emergency shelters. Partner organizations' purchase of cabins would be funded via a grant program offered by the Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities. Or option B, Department of Purchasing and Contract to establish a vendor contract for the County of San Diego to purchase the cabins, arrange for storage and delivery, and the cabins would be issued to partner organizations to set up on their private properties as emergency shelters. And 4, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to leverage the established vendor contract for the County of San Diego to purchase and set up cabins as part of ongoing compassionate emergency housing solution efforts to support the commitment to seek an end to homelessness. This concludes our presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you. This action originated, was brought forward by Supervisors Anderson and Vice Chair Vargas. Let me ask if you'd like to make some comments before public comment or after?
I'm good after public comment.
After? Okay, let's hear from our public speakers, and we'll come back to my 2 colleagues.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 13 requests to speak on item 29, 5 in person, and 8 requesting to speak by phone. Also note that we did not receive any e-comments on this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 29 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with the speaker in favor, followed by the speakers in opposition. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward Catherine Rhodes, followed by the speakers in opposition, Audra, Consuelo, Mark, and Michael Brando. I've called your name. Please come forward.
Lovely. Catherine Rhodes, thank you so much. This is a miracle. This is finally going forward. I can't believe it. I've been working on this for forever, but so far there hasn't been one emergency shelter ever approved by city staff since 2010, when the housing element changed to say that you're allowed to have ministerial approval of emergency shelters in industrial zones M50, 52, 54, 58. And so far, staff is still trying to say it's a discretionary project. So anyway, I came here to say that, I had all these problems, but thank goodness, fabulous, fabulous news. So anyway, county staff told me that they're in January, they're going to bring forth the appendix, now called Voluntary Appendix P, of the 2019 California Building Code for emergency housing to allow you guys to do this legally. It's a miracle. Hallelujah. The next part of it, which is also just as important, is the changes to the zoning ordinance that your staff told me again today that they're going to make changes to the zoning ordinance for emergency shelters, specifically in the definitions and in the parking requirements, so that they're in compliance with the voluntary appendix. So anyway, that's fabulous, fabulous news. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that homeless emergency shelters are exempt from CEQA, exempt. They're exempt from zoning in the city and the county because you did an emergency shelter declaration. And so just so you know, in Los Angeles for the Eagle Rock Recreation Center in Figueroa, they say they have a statutory exemption from the provisions of the CEQA because it's specific actions to prevent or mitigate an emergency. And also because there's a governor's executive order N3220 that suspends CEQA, suspends it if you use the HAP funding that you guys are using to buy these. Because you're buying it with the money.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Thank you.
Mark, as I've said to you guys many times before, finally you're looking like you're approaching the right idea, but you're not probably, because I suspect that, first of all, the cabins, are they wood? We have termites around here. Secondly, the other structures, would it be cheaper to 3D print, like I've told you at least 4 times? For about $1,000 each, you could 3D print 10 by 10s that would be stackable, lightweight, probably a plastic alloy. I've tried to break a little toy that big. You can't even break it, and this would be a wall much thicker. They could also be lent to other communities, or you guys probably want to make money, of course, and that's the problem, is that we already have Fiesta Island. You could 3D print 7,500 of these structures on 1/8 of the island where nothing but rabbits or a few homeless people are in the middle of the island on the far side there. It would be easy to do. This place is already there. It's surrounded by a moat like Prison Island. It's not going to be any bother to the rest of the community. And you could have buses pick them up, and your counselors could help them get work and set up bank accounts and eventually reintegrate back into society. All these people want is a locked room to keep from getting their heads bashed in at night and a chance to live again. So anyway, it could have been a good thing. It probably could be, but I suspect you're going to rent other properties, make money subsidized through our tax dollars forever, which is, of course, a horribly bad idea. And as the corporations don't pay people enough for housing, the problem will get worse and worse. And you'll buy more and more land, and eventually our tax dollars won't even be able to cover all of us that are going to be dependent on the government, which is what you want in your tyrannical system ultimately, globally.
Next speaker, please.
Use the name Audra. Just like Mark said, I mean, for $5,000 each, you could 3D print homes, right? And you had some people, when you go out to your community and ask the people, I mean, I'm sure they're stakeholders, but that's fine. But yeah, they've offered up some pretty cool things, because it's like, I mean, you want to get 100 sleeping cabins for $150,000 each. What? I mean, that's cheap, right? That is some cheap housing for like one person, maybe 2, maybe 3 if they want to kind of get really, you know, cozy together. But it's just weird that I can go and, you know, talk to the homeless, which is what I was doing before I was assaulted here, after you guys had your break in your meeting last time. And it's interesting that people can't get any kind of help if they don't have their ID. How many people you think that are homeless have a birth certificate and a social security card and an ID? I mean, I was even turned away. It's like, oh my gosh, if you can't have kids, then we can't help you. So, I mean, you act like you're helping people, but it's like you want to create all of these programs and things like that to put money into it, yet the homeless problem continues to get worse. Just like everything in the county. Just like everything. You get more money, you create more positions, and everything gets worse. Just like with the sheriff's department. So great. Because you guys virtue signal, like, we're doing so much, pat us on the back. Like, Nathan, you got all your yippee-doo-dahs today, right?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
It's a fucking joke.
Consuelo, understand this. The only help government will ever give to these issues is contributing to perpetuate them, not solve them. There's too much to be fixed in their purposely flawed system. It's beyond repair. They are doing everything they can to be done with the independent, hardworking middle class. Government is the reason why these problems exist. Throughout history, they've never made things better. Just look at what's happened in the past few years. We now have a way bigger problem due to their misinformation and their mishandlings of the scamdemic. With all their taxes they've collected from us, they could have already easily helped the homeless wanting help and all the small businesses who were affected, but they didn't. Why? Because it's a part of the plan. It's the agenda, 2030, death to the hardworking upper and middle classes. You see it, it's happening, been happening. Look around you. Things are not getting better. Government is only getting bigger. The progress they do make is only ever for their benefit. Government is not, have not, never will be the solution. They create the problems to appear as the heroes. They thrive on an ignorant, consumed, obedient, and dependent society. A society which asks no questions, a society who's entirely dependent on them for everything. Above all, a society not paying attention. The majority of the people living here do not even know who any of these public servants are. But the ones paying close attention know who every paid shill and puppet in this county are. Government only cares that you pay them their taxes and that we abide by their bullshit. It's not easy standing up here and calling out big bully government, but what's the alternative?
Thank you. Time is up. Yeah. Final call from Michael Brando. We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll start with our first caller.
Hi, about this homeless plan group think. We've talked enough about the homeless. Mostly, you politicians talked what you do best. Obviously did not listen despite having a wealth of ideas, both in speeches and in emails. So what's the end point? Another resolution to create the resolution to resolve this issue? Maybe in a few years, a few decades. The shelters you're advocating for and the board's subsidized housing plan, they're a good start. But this is a multifaceted problem, as I think you're recognizing. I think that dignity, employment, quality of life is really the number one problem. It costs society as a whole, fearful people, police costs, extra ambulance trips, and on and on. By the way, you're funding this with ARPA funds, I believe. They're for COVID-caused stuff. Much of homelessness has nothing to do with COVID, so why are you using them? Then you want to do psychological stuff. Psychotropic meds are great if they work, but they can drive people crazy either when the people take it or when they forget to take it. And speak of crime, homeless, who the cops mess with or have too much spare time, that makes them turn to crime to fill a void, perhaps get their stuff back. Now, there are a few good ideas that I've had and told you about. They could be good teachers of survivalism.
Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, good afternoon, Noemi Jocelyn. I appreciate the effort, although the material being used is in question. I'm not an environmentalist, so I'm not going to say my expertise or anything like that on that, but for the homeless population that's shuffled around to different places and locations, there's actually whistleblowers as we speak that have this information out there that, Todd Gloria shuffles homelessness in different locations. And one of the problems as of recently is that the homelessness or the homeless are becoming very violent towards the citizens. And I know that for a fact, because as a matter of fact, today, one teen was attacked by a 50 or 60-year-old in my neighborhood in Chula Vista area. So I just want to be mindful of that, of the certain material, because I know this has been, gone up in ambers and affected other structures and things like that. I'm sure that it could be looked up and placed in a more, factual manner. But that is indeed one of the facts that I've looked up and known that a lot of this arson, there's homeless that start fires and trash cans and stuff like that, and then these structures end up being, not torn down or whatever. So I just want to be mindful of these couple of things that are happening, and hopefully, we could come to some kind of agreement. But yeah, that would be great if these little issues are set in place, or more safety measures are taken into account. So, yeah, just, today on ABC 10 News, teenage.
Now hear from the next caller.
This is Dean. Getting rid of homelessness sounds good, but this whole cabin idea sounds pretty sketchy. I mean, to put homeless people in cabin in the unincorporated area, what are they going to do? I mean, on the bus system, they're cutting down routes. People can't get around, so what are you going to do? Stick people in the middle of the unincorporated area to starve and to not be able to work? So that sounds very sketchy. Another thing is, there could be cabins for homeless people today, but how do we know that they're not going to be quarantine facilities or some kind of camps in the future? Another thing you guys were mentioning is the cabins may be given to contractors or subcontractors or something like that. It seems like maybe somebody could get the cabins, let some homeless people stay for a few days or a few years, and then take those cabins over. So while this whole homelessness cabin thing sounds nice on paper, it seems like all it's going to do is just stick homeless people in the middle of the unincorporated area where they can't get a job, they can't go shopping, and that's not going to help them. If you're really trying to help homeless people, rather find a way to get them a plot of land and they can build a house. I know, in Guatemala, if somebody gets a plot of land, the government assists them in building a house. When everybody gets shut down for COVID and fined for working and loses their job and becomes homeless, are we just going to end up taking everybody's home and sticking them in cabins in the middle of the unincorporated area? That sounds thoroughly ridiculous.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Truth. This item is very much related to item 8, where AB 140 gave $2 billion to counties through homeless housing, assistance, and prevention grants. And just the round 4 grant today was $12.8 million. According to the 2022 We All Count point-in-time count of 8,427 homeless people on streets or shelters on one night, only 4,106 were unsheltered. The reality is about half of all homeless people are actually sheltered. It's a miracle. But ignoring basic facts, as these supervisors always do, this item will approve the purchase of 100 termite-infested sleeping cabins, thanks, Mark, or an unknown amount of circus tent sprung shelters for partner organizations to place on their properties for use as shelters. And criteria will be developed to cite county-funded shelter options on non-county property. Isn't that interesting? Shelters on land the government doesn't own, paid for with taxpayer money. What does that mean? The item doesn't specify. Option A, partner organizations can purchase cabins directly from the vendor to set up on their private properties as emergency shelters, funded via a grant program offered by the Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities. Option B, establishes a vendor contract for the County of San Diego to purchase the cabins and arrange for storage and delivery. Cabins would be issued to partner organizations to set up on their private properties as emergency shelters at a completely unknown cost to taxpayers, but all covered with Biden inflation debt dollars from the American Destruction Plan Act. All these additions to debt and inflation are definitely in alignment with the county's framework for extending homelessness. No to blank check shelters.
We've worked on homelessness for a decade, and we have failed.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Thank you for your time. This is John Brady. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of Amicus. We have built the first tiny sleeping cabin project in El Cajon and will begin occupying it next week. We are very excited that you are choosing to support tiny cabins as a solution. We believe that they can be dispersed on faith-based properties, private properties, and county land throughout the county. Another note about Amicus is that we build these cabins using local labor. And in fact, we believe that we can keep the cost of these cabins under $20,000 per unit with our model. Please support this agenda item, and we really appreciate your support as you move forward with these projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. We'll go first to Supervisor Anderson, and then we'll go to Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Fletcher. First of all, I want to thank Vice Chair Vargas for all her help. You know, we've had just a crisis in East County of homelessness, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And I just want to thank Nick and your team and Barbara. You've done an incredible job addressing so many of these issues. But some of the challenges that we have moving forward is it takes a long time to locate a shelter. It takes a long time to do anything. And I saw that the city of El Cajon had moved forward with Amicus, and they had built, I believe it's 8 or 9 shelters, and they had done it in a very short period of time. And now you have people moving in there. This isn't long-term housing. This is short-term housing until perhaps more proper shelters can be built. But hopefully, those shelters, even after they're built, are temporary as we help people get off the street and into a more permanent environment. And, you know, we've been proactive with vouchers. We've been proactive with many things, trying to make things work in the interim. And I saw this as an opportunity. And when I approached Chair Vice Chair, I jumped the gun, called you Chair. She was so helpful because she saw the value to this as well. This is a way to meet some of the needs in a timeline It's out-of-box thinking, and I don't mean that to be a pun because these can be in a box, but when you look at it, we're going to be able to bring solutions faster to people in a temporary way. But if you're living on the street and you lived through the rain that we had the last couple of days and you're in the cold, I think you would appreciate having a place to go, even if we don't have all the shelters that need to be built in East County yet. So again, thank you, team, for doing such a great job. The other part I like about this is that it allows faith and community-based organizations to play a pivotal role. They already are doing it, but we're giving them more resources. And so I'd like to make a motion to support staff's recommendations and select option 3.1, which is option A. And I think that that gives us the most flexibility moving forward to work and partner with faith-based and community-based organizations in my district and hopefully everybody's district. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Anderson, and thank you for being such a strong partner in this process. And for me, it's really about seeking innovative and initiatives that are going to help us in our efforts to really make sure that every individual in this county has access to a roof over their heads. I mean, that's one of the #1 priorities I think all of us have. I think it's going to take all of us to really identify available spaces and to really think outside the box, work with all of the 18 cities across the county to really think about what this looks like. And I appreciate that we're creating also the public-private partnerships and with nonprofits, et cetera, community partners, because I do think that they are crucial for us to be able to increase shelter options and ensure that everyone in the county has access to a safe, healthy, and dignified housing option. I think this is a first good step, and we absolutely need additional resources. I know we voted on that a little bit earlier today, but it's really going to be about innovative solutions and then partnering up with, so it's the housing piece, the innovative solutions, and really making sure that resources are available for folks when they are in these situations. And so looking forward to working together to ensure that we continue to move forward. And again, thanks for your partnership, Supervisor, and I'm happy to make a second to the motion.
All right, thank you. We have a motion by Supervisor Anderson, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas, to adopt the recommendations utilizing option A. Not seeing any other requests to speak, please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
Agenda item 30 will be heard at a time certain at 11 a.m. tomorrow or at the conclusion of the land use meeting. We'll go to item 31, establishing the Interfaith Behavioral Health Services Workforce Center of Excellence. We're doing a tremendous amount in San Diego County to meet the behavioral health needs. We see the tremendous demand for services in our communities with our loved ones on our streets. We also know that every day we do a better job of tackling the stigma around accessing mental health services. We only compound the access issue of not having enough. We need more qualified, trained professionals. We also know we do not have enough workforce to meet the need today. A recent study that I helped commission with San Diego Workforce Partnership discovered we need an additional 8,100 behavioral health workers to meet the current need today. By 2027, taking into account attrition and retirements, we estimate that number to be over 18,000 folks. The report outlines solutions to help address this issue, paying workers better, removing administrative burdens, placing training opportunities, addressing barriers to education, placement, and advancement. Today's item is a really important step forward, consistent with this work and this study and the blueprint that was outlined to move forward and implementing one of the key strategies, and that is establishing the region's first behavioral health workforce center of excellence. A primary obstacle to increase the number of students and graduates is the lack of quality training sites. Creating centers of excellence will address this barrier and build a pipeline for in-demand behavioral health jobs. These centers will give on-the-job training for behavioral health professionals, allow for advancement in careers, and provide people the connection to those experiencing behavioral health issues. A unique opportunity now exists to pilot a center of excellence with Interface Community Services, a local nonprofit organization providing behavioral health services to individuals in need. Interfaith was founded in 1979 and delivers an array of programs, including short-term housing, homeless outreach, and other support services. While a center of excellence in Interfaith will help bolster these programs while training the next generation of workers. The program is expected to develop apprenticeships and on-the-job training positions for those such as psychiatric technicians, marriage and family therapists, licensed professional clinical workers, substance abuse counselors, certified nurse assistants, peer support specialists, and entry-level social workers. It is estimated these workers can provide services by up to 31,000 people over the 5-year period. Creating these centers require a collaborative approach. All of the efforts on behavioral health do, with healthcare settings, universities, nonprofit, philanthropic entities, government agencies, all working together. And I want to say a special thank you to Price Philanthropies. They have time and again stepped up to deliver for our community and really come through in significant ways to meet the behavioral health needs. And they are investing $2.5 million to get this program off the ground. The proposal before the county is to invest $1 million over a 5-year period to help start this program. I think this really is a great model of the philanthropy community stepping up, our county government stepping up, our local nonprofits and service providers stepping up and coming together to meet the need. Addressing the shortage of workforce is a huge issue when it comes to providing behavioral health, and never has there been a more pressing or urgent need to do this, and I'm hopeful that this pilot program can begin to meet the need and be another part of our comprehensive effort and approach. And so with that, I urge everyone's support. I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendations in item 31, and second by Vice Chair Vargas, and let's hear from our public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 7 requests to speak on item 31, 3 in person, and 4 requesting to speak by phone. Also note that we did not receive any e-comments on this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 31 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition to the recommendation. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward Audra, Mark, and Michael Brando. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Mark, obviously, when people don't make enough to have a good standard of living and be able to rent or buy housing, they get stressed. And regular people, when they're stressed, can become mentally ill. People just aren't made to take constant stress. You're not addressing the real problems whatsoever. Corporations should pay people a lot more for their work. But of course, since Nathan's with the World Economic Forum and they're the global corporations, it's not hard to see whose side you're on. And that's not okay or good. So your business model pretty much, you're spending a lot of money. You're going to put people out in the field who are going to be trained to medicate these people. Some of them will have their rights taken away from them if you can. And it seems that you're authorizing yourself to be able to do that. There are people, of course, who are so mentally ill that they really can't take care of themselves. But I have little doubt that will be extended and abused to people who you simply shouldn't be trying to control. So this is all a really seriously bad idea. And a lot of people are going to be medicated and get even sicker, and more people will be stressed from homelessness. Your own expert at the SDSU meeting, who was a global strategist, she was even already stating that they expected, I can't even remember the huge number, it was like 10 or 20% of the population is on the verge of homelessness month to month at any time. And with what you guys are doing about the problem, which is nothing, it's going to happen. And it's going to keep happening and make you money, and it sucks.
Next speaker, please.
Use the name Audra, but Mark, they're doing what they're supposed to do, you know? They're being paid to do this kind of stuff. So it's interesting, I'm finding on many of the agenda items, they were turned in past the deadline. Andrew? Isn't it supposed to be the Friday before at noon? But yet many of them were on the 5th, past noon. But why would you guys follow your own rules? It's so ridiculous to think that you guys would follow rules, right? But you want us to follow rules. It's so great. And the fact that you think that you're going to need 18,500 behavioral health workers is terrifying. The fact that Gonzalez is right back there and he assaulted me a month ago is terrifying. We see the writing on the wall with you guys, and you act like, they're just crazy. Right, Nathan, you want me to go to one of those psych units? Yeah, you agreed with that, which is super disturbing, being that you're the chair, and like, you want the best for everybody. So is the best for everybody going into a psychiatric unit? Because then it's like, maybe I'll see you there, right? Yeah, don't look up, because it's not, right? I don't have to face it. It's disturbing that you guys think that you need that many workers for behavioral health when you're causing behavioral health issues with all the things that you do. I mean, to sit there and be dragged out like a rag doll, am I just supposed to sit and take it? Am I just supposed to, I'll just lay there. It's great.
Thank you. Final call from Michael
Is that a behavior?
Brando. We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone.
No outbursts, please. Let the clerk call the next speakers. Your outbursts are disrupting the conduct of the meeting. Your first warning. Please call the next speakers.
We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Start with our first caller.
My name is Eleanor, and I'm calling in opposition to item number 31. I think it's absolutely disgraceful that you cause a problem, you cause people emotional and mental stress, and then you offer a solution to your problem, and your solution is to medicate people. That's the only solution that happens when people are put in psychiatric units. So you've created the problem. Let's talk about why there's such a problem. Could it be that perhaps you have masked people for 3 years, kept them in fear, shut down people's businesses, made them lose their livelihood, and then you want to call them crazy by putting them in psychiatric units and giving them medication that doesn't work? There's no proof at all that psychotropic drugs do anything to help a person's emotional issues. So while you're all sitting up there, let's talk about what's causing all of these issues. Could it be these COVID jabs that are causing depression and suicidal tendencies? Yes, of course it is. It's on the list of the side effects for some of these injections. So let's keep saying that we need to give people COVID vaccines, because then we can get more people in to our psychiatric units and get more money from Big Pharma, because we keep giving them meds that do absolutely nothing for them. And then you're going to train all these young healthcare workers in administering medications. All they are doing are becoming waiters or waitresses in a medication restaurant. That's all they do. They medicate several times a day just to keep people quiet. I've seen firsthand what goes on in some of these psychiatric units, and it's absolutely disgusting. You medicate people who don't need to be medicated, and you say there's a problem when you are the ones who are causing the problem. Have you ever thought that the Board of Supervisors?
We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hi, John Brady calling in again. Thank you for your time, Supervisor Fletcher and board members. We are calling in. I'm calling in on behalf of Lived Experience Advisors to support this initiative. Clearly, we are in desperate need of behavioral health workers, and Interfaith Community Service has proven itself to be a phenomenal partner in the work to resolve homelessness. So we are calling in to support this initiative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
This is, I see where it's going. I mean, we have this whole fake pandemic. We take people's houses, we take people's cars, and then when we get depressed, what do they get? They get to be medicated and put into these cabin camps in the middle of the woods where they can't do anything or support themselves. And then they get all the psychiatric medication. I mean, you guys have been talking about the problem with opiates, but psychiatric medications act on the receptors and doing like 20 others. I mean, these things are so much worse than opiates. We shouldn't be hiring 18,500 people to be handing these out to people. And irony is not lost on me because we're on today. So this is what they get. They get put in this little cabin in the middle of the woods. They can't do anything, and people are losing their livelihood. We can't medicating them and they surrounded, and we built huge medical hospitals. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
We are Truth. This item is hoping to add 18,500 behavioral health workers by 2027. It will also establish a 5-year pilot program with Interfaith Community Services, which includes people like Yusef Miller, who I've seen drifting in at least 7 different organizations that have either received proclamations or checks from these supervisors repeatedly. Does he have a real job? I wonder. And everyone knows these programs are never pilots. They're just beginnings for permanent implementation wherever the state and federal governments put their debt dollars. In this case, it's $1 million from the state's Mental Health Services Act. So, Nathan, I'll go along with this program as long as you agree to commit yourself to the behavioral health programs you are clearly in need of. I mean, whenever you speak, the word that usually exits your World Economic Forum mouth is crisis. Clearly, you haven't made the county better when you're constantly declaring new emergencies and crises every other week. Who are you to judge, Nathan? Yet you've tried playing the role of a behavioral health worker at least 2 times this year. Once at the April 5th meeting and again at the October 11th meeting.
I wish I could live in some of these facilities that you create because they cost that much money. I feel, oh, Nathan, that look, you're like, I wish you could too. Exactly, right? High five on that. We agree on something. We do. Oh my gosh.
We agree that one.
We do, that you think I should be in a home. Oh my gosh, I think you should too. Maybe we'll be in one together. Wouldn't that be great? Gosh, that's so great, Nathan, to know that the chair of the board, being somebody fighting for the rights of all people, should be in a psychiatric unit.
Yep, that's proof positive that you're a nut job, Nathan. And it's great that you're finally going to let NACO train Nora take some hits. That'll
Thank
be
you.
crazy, too.
Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. We have a motion by myself, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas, to approve the recommendations in item 31. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
We're going to go to item number 32, A Better Way, adopting contracting standard board policy for janitorial, landscaping, and security service contracts. This is an item brought forward by myself and Supervisor Lawson Reamer. I appreciate tremendously her partnership in this. Today's action really is designed to ensure that the contractors we hire here at the county, the janitorial staff who is here, the landscapers, the security personnel, to make sure that they get a competitive wage package, health benefits, sick days, to make sure they have better workplace protections and proper training. The proposal includes a first-of-its-kind wage theft fund in which a portion of contract award is withheld from the contractor and will only be released pending no wage claim thefts made during the life of the contract. I really appreciate tremendously all of the workers in our county, and we work really hard to do right by them. But in particular, I want to say a special thank you to a group of workers who often feel unseen. That's our janitorial staff, our landscaping staff, our security staff. We appreciate you, and we recognize you, and we see the value that you bring, but we know that our words alone are not enough. We need to take action to make sure that you get paid fairly, to make sure that you have good worker protections, to make sure you have the basic dignity of paid sick days and other benefits that workers throughout our county have had for so long. We know during the height of so much of the pandemic and everything we went through, you all continued to show up. You continued to work. You continued to make sure our facilities were clean, responsible, safe, and you continue to do everything that we asked you to do. And so we're here today to take some action to try and recognize that and put in place some structural changes to help ensure that we're doing right by workers who work so incredibly hard for us. I think it's a small step forward, a pretty significant step forward in terms of what we're doing, and it's something that I believe it is long overdue. I want to say a special thank you to our Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement, who's been helpful on many of these issues. I want to extend my appreciation to our district attorney, who has been willing to step up and lean in on issues of wage theft and misclassification and other issues. And I think we have seen some challenges as it relates to our janitorial contracts here in the county, and we've had to take action and move forward. And I think this helps solidify a better way moving forward. If approved, the Chief Administrative Officer will begin to implement the contracting standards and all requests for proposals posted after December 13th, 2022, and all subsequent contracts for janitorial, landscaping, and security service. We think that this is an important step forward. Some of the provisions that are in our board policy include labor peace agreements. These are important to guarantee labor peace and to protect the county's proprietary and economic interests. Collective bargaining agreements. This agreement helps empower employees to negotiate the terms of employment, such as pay, benefits, hours, leave, job health, and safety policies. First of its kind wage theft fund, which I mentioned earlier. Establishing a wage floor for services contracts based on conducting a benchmark analysis in 5-year annual, looking at comparable jurisdictions with similar contracts. Janitorial registry and sexual harassment prevention training. Worker retention policy, to require contractors to retain existing workers when a contract changes. Compliance with all local, state, and national laws. Contractors will be required to comply with all of the local laws and rules and regulation, and the County Office of Labor Standard Enforcement will have the ability to investigate or audit any potential allegations of wrongdoing. And contract enforcement. The Office of Labor Standards Enforcement will have an important role to play in contract enforcement. With the consideration of this policy, we are solidifying the value that we put our county contractors, hold them to the same standard, that they be required to provide dignity and respect to the workers who are there. And I've heard so many of the stories and meeting personally with so many of our workers of the struggles and challenges they face, and we want to provide a better opportunity for a quality life. Folks who want to work hard are not asking to get rich. They're simply asking to be treated with the basic human dignity and respect that I believe every worker should be afforded. And I think this is a strong step forward in us looking out for folks who work so incredibly hard for us. And so with that, I'm pleased to make a motion to adopt the recommendations in item 32. We'll go to, thank you. And we'll go to Supervisor Wasson-Reamer.
Thank you so much. And I first just want to thank all of our janitorial staff and team and many of the folks I see here today for having the courage and the bravery to come forward and call for this action. You know, I was made aware of the many challenges that so many people who work in service of our community face because you all are organized and you are able to come and advocate for yourself. And I just am so impressed by your bravery and your courage in speaking up on your own behalf and on behalf of your fellow workers. Because this action today is about taking a stand to protect low-income workers, women workers, workers of color, many who speak English as a second language, and those who have been historically vulnerable. This board policy will protect workers who are some of our most essential, but also many who've been victims of sexual harassment, stolen wages, and being fired unjustly. Our action today will protect more than 1,000 janitors, landscapers, security guards, and other service workers who contract with the county from these workplace abuses. Not only that, but this policy will ensure that pay and benefits are compared to cities across California to establish a compensation floor to raise the wages for these low-pay workers. Contracted employees in these fields are inherently vulnerable to abuses, and this new policy will provide additional protections. The county is one of the largest employers countywide, so this will have a regional effect. The policy will help us work with contractors that provide benefits, training, and protections to their workers, instead of spending taxpayer time and money to rectify wage claims or other violations after an abuse has already occurred. Our new evaluation criteria will help screen out contractors that cut corners, engage in wage theft, or ask their employees to buy their own supplies. This action will protect many women workers from sexual harassment in the face of complex power structures that can make it difficult to know when and to whom to report violations. We know that between a quarter and a third of female janitors surveyed in the 2018 California Janitorial Survey indicated they had experienced unwanted sexual advances. This action says that in the County of San Diego, that is no longer. One of the most unique elements of this action is the creation of a wage theft fund, where we're going to set aside funds from the contractor budgets to help contract workers who are not paid what they are owed, which allows us to hold them accountable. Last year, California workers filed nearly 19,000 individual claims, totaling more than $338 million in stolen wages. And resolving these claims often takes more than 135 days. These delays cause additional undue burdens on the workers and can lead to long-term impacts like housing eviction. 5 years after workers make their claims in wage theft cases, records show that only 1 in 7 were paid their judgment in full. This action at the County of San Diego will make sure that we are protecting our workers here in San Diego County. There will be recourse for wage theft here with our workers. This is just the latest of a number of policies this board has approved over the past 2 years to improve the working conditions and uplift the voice of hardworking San Diegans who make this county run and who often do not have a voice. So to all of you who are here today, to everyone who spent so much time working on this over the last many, many months, to my colleague who's been really a wonderful partner in bringing this forward, thank you all so much. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for your service to your community, and I stand with you.
Thank you, Supervisor Wasserman. I will remind the members of the public there's no clapping or outbursts during the proceedings of the meeting. Please ask you to follow and obey all the rules of the proceedings. With that, we'll hear from our public speakers, and then when we come back, we'll go to Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 24 requests to speak on item 32, 16 in person, and 8 requesting to speak by phone. Also note for the record that we received 3 e-comments, all in favor of this item. Also note that we have 1 individual registered their support but did not wish to address the board. Any members of the public that requested to speak by phone on item 32, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with those in favor of this item. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'll be calling you in groups of 5, so please listen for your name. I'd like to invite forward the following individuals: Gerald Walker, Maria Ortega, Sofia Martinez, Luis Marquez, and Catalina Camacho. If I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Sofía Martínez.
And good afternoon, my name is Sofía Martínez.
He trabajado como conserje en este edificio los últimos 10 años.
Okay, I've been working here, in cleaning in this building for the past 10 years.
con más de 30 años de experiencia
And I've had, mhm.
en la industria de limpieza,
And I've had over 30 years of experience in the cleaning industry.
ganando un miserable sueldo de un mínimo.
Well, making a miserable amount is the minimum wage.
Sin ningún seguro médico y sin ninguna prestaciones.
Without any type of medical insurance or benefits.
Como trabajadora subcontratista en este condado de San Diego,
Okay? And
he tenido que soportar condiciones de trabajo injustas.
And as a worker here, I'm a subcontractor, I've had to really put up with conditions of work that I believe are unfair.
Falta de acceso a atención médica, salarios de pobreza.
Lack of medical attention, and the salaries are very poor.
Ya no estaré en silencio.
And I'm not going to keep quiet anymore.
Ya no permaneceré invisible.
And I'm not going to be invisible anymore.
El momento del cambio es ahora.
The moment of change is now.
Con su ayuda.
And with your help.
Hoy estoy aquí para pedirle a la Junta de Supervisores.
I am here to ask the Board of Supervisors.
Que aquí en el condado, yo y mis compañeros y compañeras necesitamos de compañías responsables.
That here in this county, my male workers and my female workers, we really need people who are responsible.
Que nos trates con respeto y dignidad.
And that these companies need to treat us with respect and dignity.
No queremos ser millonarios, solo queremos un sueldo justo.
We don't want to be millionaires. We just want just salary.
Gracias.
And thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Soy el señor Luis Márquez. Muy buenas tardes, señores supervisores.
Okay, my name is Luis Márquez. Good afternoon, County Board of Supervisors.
Nosotros y todos los empleados de aquí mantenemos sus edificios limpios.
All of us and all the employees that you see here, we are the ones who maintain your buildings clean.
Para cuando ustedes lleguen al siguiente día, todo esté satisfecho y también para la gente para el público.
And so when you come here the following day, you're satisfied, not only for you, but also for the public.
Les pedimos, señores supervisores, que escuchen nuestras súplicas.
Okay, we ask supervisors, please, we're begging you for this.
Ya basta que las compañías subcontratistas que vienen nos estén pisoteando.
That's enough, that these subcontractor companies are stepping on us. That's enough.
Y por lo regular siempre nos han amenazado que si no cumplimos tenemos 90 días y ellos nos pueden despedir a la hora que ellos quieran.
And they're always threatening us, telling us that we have 90 days and that they are able to fire us whenever they want.
Ahora yo les voy a decir algo personal.
I want to tell you something that is personal.
Yo y mi esposa siempre estamos temerosos de cómo vamos a acabar el mes, cómo vamos a pagar la renta y la comida.
My wife and I, we're always so fearful at the end of the month. And how are we going to pay for our rent? How are we going to pay for our food?
Aparte, yo tuve una operación muy costosa que no sé cómo voy a pagarla. Debo $14,000 al hospital.
And I also had surgery, and I don't even know how I'm going to pay. I owe the hospital $14,000.
Por eso les pedimos, señores supervisores, que lo que ustedes vayan a hacer sea lo correcto.
Okay. That's what we're asking you, supervisors, that whatever you do, we want it to be the correct thing.
No tengo nada más que decir, más que darle muchas gracias a ustedes, señores supervisores, por escucharlos.
I don't have anything else to add. I just want to thank you so much for listening to us.
I'll call additional speakers. Rosa Lopez, Bridget Browning, Christian Ramirez, Michelle Krug, and Yardena Aaron. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Hi, they said Rosa's not here. I'm Bridget Browning. I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the Labor Council, and I'm so excited to be here today. Most of you probably know I come from the Hotel Workers Union, Unite Here, and our slogan was always, one job should be enough, que un trabajo debe ser suficiente, ¿verdad? And so I'm here today to support the janitors trying to live on one job, because I'm sure most of them have to have multiple jobs to be able to survive. We're urging you to establish this policy that will treat contracted security officers, janitors, and landscapers with the dignity and respect that they deserve. San Diego County depends on the hard, essential work that janitors, landscapers, and security officers perform to keep our facilities clean, safe, and beautiful. Continuity of employment is key to ensuring quality services are provided. And as a union leader who has had their members terminated when a new company comes in, it can be so emotionally difficult for those workers to start over again, and you all setting the standard, I think is wonderful, and I'm very proud that you're my supervisors. For too long, contracted workers in San Diego County have had to endure unsafe working conditions, lack of access to health care, and poverty wages. This has contributed to increased turnover and compromised the services the county receives. We will not be silent anymore. San Diego County deserves better, and we will not be invisible. The time for change is now. San Diego is a union town, and we have a moral and political obligation to ensure that all workers and their families are treated with respect and dignity. With the high cost of living in San Diego County, many contracted essential workers who are majority Black and Latino workers struggle to make ends meet. Having a model employer give them family health care coverage would relieve so much stress for them so that they're not using the limited money they have to make medical payments out of their pocket or be forced to go to Tijuana. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. My name is Cristian Ramirez. I am Supervisor Vargas' constituent and also the policy director here at SEIU USWW. Just want to thank the leadership of this board for bringing this item forward. I want to echo what Bridget mentioned, that this policy will not only establish a floor for San Diego County contracted workers, but it sets a gold standard across the state of California. For far too long, contracted workers by the public sector have endured exploitation, abuse, poor working conditions, wage theft, sexual harassment. And today, the workers, especially the women leaders who clean this building every single night, have taught us a valuable lesson. Ya basta, enough. And I am truly humbled to be able to represent them here today and to work with each and every one of you to ensure that we set a standard, that the days of the San Diego in which Black and brown workers were treated with such racist attitudes are over. And now we establish a new era, an era in which all workers, regardless of where they were born, what color their skin is, will be afforded the right to live with respect and dignity in their own community. Many of the workers who clean your buildings have to commute across the international border because they can't afford to call San Diego home. And with this policy, we're setting a new standard, a standard that rewards all workers for the wonderful work that they do for each and every one of you and all of us who call San Diego County home. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'll invite the remaining speakers in favor, Aaron Grassi and Tom Magnuson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jardina Aaron, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maintenance Cooperation Trust Fund. Our organization works to level the playing field, exposing wage theft, insurance fraud in the janitorial industry. I'm also on the board of the Black Worker Center, which is a consortium of Black Worker Centers across Southern California. Why are we here today? My organization over the past 20 years has had our hands in investigations of over $100 million of wage theft. So it is with great solidarity that we're here standing with Nathan Fletcher, with Ms. Lawson Reamer for bringing forth a responsible contractor policy and all on the board who support this, because who are the faces that support and clean our buildings? They're women janitors. They're janitors who are working full-time, yet need to rely on public assistance to still feed themselves, feed their families, showing up to work every day during the pandemic when many of us were working from home, safe in our homes, and still earning a full wage, above minimum wage. So these sweeping changes lift the floor. It lifts the floor not only for the workers, but for the responsible contractors who are doing the right thing, who are hiring their staff as employees, who are paying insurance. It is ending the race to the bottom. And so with that, I want to go ahead and also say that this compounds the effect of not necessarily needing to have additional wage theft departments. Organizations like myself, there are hidden costs that wage theft has that many of us don't recognize. So to all of our stakeholders, those who are on the board, those who are in the industry, responsible contractors, and clients who are here to do the right thing, we are here to stand for labor justice here in San Diego, and we are proud to support the Board of Supervisors' actions today. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. I am so proud of so many of the things that this board has done. This is absolutely one of them. That it, as previous speakers have said, lifting the floor, setting the gold standard, all of these things make such a difference in the actual quality of life of every individual janitor. They can stop being so afraid for their job and actually be proud of the work that they're doing. And that just lifts such a burden off of people living their individual lives with their families. I also just want to say how appreciative I am of the change making that Chair Fletcher has done, has taken this board. It again has made such a difference in the people who have followed, having that more of a safety net. And I am thrilled that he has recommended Nora Vargas to Supervisor Vice Chair Nora Vargas to continue in those footsteps. I know that he has led with his moral compass always directly in front of him. And I know that that will continue with whatever he does on this board and in other places. Thank you.
I'll note for the record that speaker was Michelle Krug. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Erin Surmoto-Grassi. I'm the Policy Director at Alliance San Diego. First of all, I want to say thank you for your time, your patience, your leadership, and your commitment, particularly during these long meetings. With that in mind, we'll keep this very, very brief. Alliance San Diego stands with contracted essential workers, the janitors, security workers, and landscapers here today, who diligently work to keep our buildings clean, facilities clean, safe, and beautiful. There's not really much I can add to what Chair Fletcher and Supervisor Lawson-Remer said when it comes to the value of essential workers here in our county, other than to say that they play such a vital role in making certain that the county is able to operate every single day. And we're happy to see that the county Supervisor Lawson-Remer and Chair Fletcher have brought this proposal forward to recognize these contributions. So for those reasons, Alliance San Diego supports item 32, and we urge the board to pass it. Thank you.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite the speakers in opposition of this item, Audra, Michael Brando, and Consuelo.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Magnuson. As a management trustee of the Maintenance Cooperation Trust Fund, a joint labor management organization responsible for many of the successful legal actions taken against the underground economy, on behalf of a local employer responsible for hundreds of janitors in our region. And as a San Diegan in favor of not only protecting the most vulnerable, but promoting them, I lend my voice in support for greater county transparency in its contracting process. The properties each of us engage in daily are kept clean and safe and secure through the labors of the committed, the dedicated, the essential, who are also too often the silenced, the exploited, and the forgotten. San Diego's responsible contractors, along with its partners in labor and private property ownership, have elevated wages, secured comprehensive health benefits, and created safe working places with statewide leading training initiatives that tackle known challenges like infectious disease mitigation, as well as the avoided, like workplace sexual harassment and abuse. Through committing itself to these standards, the county has an opportunity to affirm itself as a responsible contracting agent and joins an established community devoted to inclusion and growth. For too many, and by that I must stress, the irony that it's too far few, do our employees find justice far too late. For every year of protracted litigation, there are tens of years of abuse. For every successful prosecution, too many are simply ignored. Whereas justice is typically found in a court, the pursuit of it should begin with each of us. At best, a courtroom should be the resolution of justice and not its introduction. Constructive application of the principles outlined in this policy suggests a beachhead to stem the tide of unscrupulous and exploitive actors. On behalf of responsible contractors, with the adoption of these policies, we welcome you as a responsible contracting agent.
Next speaker, please.
Consuelo. To the people in the audience who are begging government for help, have you not learned anything from history? Fellow slaves, are you truly not paying attention to what they're doing? Talk about exploiting. You are not seeing the entire picture. You have to, it's time. Please understand what in fact they are doing. They could care less about you or your wants and needs. Everything is to fulfill an agenda. Please wake up to this agenda, 2030. You have to get it. It's not a conspiracy. It's been years in the making, years, a very, very long time. It's beyond the capacity of realization for many. Please remember, the same people you are asking for help from are the same government that has done the worst, the most atrocious to the minorities. It's time to stop falling into the same trap. This government is not here to help you. This government only enables dependency. They want us to be dependent on them for everything. We need to help ourselves. We must do what we can for the human species. The government has never, will never sincerely be of service to any of us. All they do is create more victims, more dependent slaves, more room for them to control us in everything we do. They are master manipulators. When will you wake up? When will you realize that we have been programmed, we have been indoctrinated, we have been slaves to their laws, to their pharmaceutical industry, to their organizations that have only kept us all down? May I remind you, you have been entirely hoodwinked and duped into believing that you are a minority. You are a different race. May I remind you there is only one race, that is the human race. We have different colors, we have different cultures, but we are one. They control us by divide and conquer. Wake up. Wake up. We are merely slaves. We are merely poor, pathetic slaves, constantly.
Thank you.
Your time has expired. Next speaker, please.
Who you winking at in the audience, Nathan? Smiling, you're like, pat you on the back. You're doing good for us, right? Oh, well, you claim that you want, to stop abuse, violations, you want justice, you want, right? Do you even know what that means? Do you know what that means? Because it will be coming. You will be judged. Be it here on earth, but also, oh man, it's sad because I actually feel sorry for you. I look at a picture of you as a child sitting next to the Clintons and I'm like, dang, that poor kid. That poor child, like I really do. And you may think it's funny, but I do, because I look at that and I'm like, and I look at you and I'm like, what happened to that kid? What happened to him? He's like buried underneath all of this evilness within you. He's still there, I know it. You were probably abused, it's all right. I was. But we all have a choice in the things that we do. And the choices that you're making are leading you into a place that you'll never be able to get out of. And you think it's funny because you're laughing right now, Nathan, but the things that you guys say about wanting to like help these workers, how are you ever going to help a worker if you're condoning and actually dictating that women should be abused in this building? God forbid that happens to any one of you. I actually don't wish that upon you.
Thank you. For the record, the speaker was Audra, and a final call for Gerald Walker, Maria Ortega, Catalina Camacho, Michael Brando. We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll start with our first caller.
Paul Hunkin. Happy holidays again. Looking this thing over, I mean, there are some good points and some really bad points. Do we need this? Do we really need this? The labor peace agreement sounds like a prohibition against strikes. That is not only not good, but I frankly doubt it's even legal. Then it seems, I mean, this money, you want to hold the funds pending some kind of good behavior from the contractor, I guess. Like a rainy day fund, maybe, for you guys. How long will you hold it? Until the people become homeless from all their debt and their landlords getting tired of non-payment because you know it's going to filter down to the workers? Or maybe is it going to last until they sue over the interest that keeps piling up on their credit cards? And finally, what's the cost to the taxpayers going to be from all the interest on this rainy day fund and the cost of living as well? I mean, from the moment you take it until the moment you finally decide to release it, what's the cost of living going to do? It's going to skyrocket 10%, 20%. I mean, I guess this is not a good time for cost of living, but, you know, you've got to think of these things.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hello again. I'm President Crystal Irving with SEIU Local 221, and I promise this is the last time you'll hear from me today. We represent more than 10,000 county workers and other members in our region, and I'm proud to stand with SEIU USWW in support of item 32. We believe in raising the standard of living for working families everywhere, and this is why we are speaking up on this item, because there is truly a better way. Contracted workers in San Diego should not face catastrophic medical bills or poverty wages. We've heard some of their stories today, and I simply want to amplify their testimony. The contracted workers, mainly Black and Latinx, should have affordable employer-provided health care coverage and earn enough to pay for San Diego County's high cost of living. Janitors, security officers, and landscapers often endure exploitation by irresponsible contractors who steal wages, break labor laws, and undercut competitors. We commend the supervisors for committing to standing up to these bad actors and setting the stage for dignified pay, benefits, and a fair workplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Eleanor, I'm calling in opposition to this item, number 32, and I want to say, my goodness, what a dog and pony show this board has put on. This is absolutely outrageous. You talk about giving certain people fair and equitable wages. Well, as Paul mentioned, once you raise their wages, you're going to raise everything. So their wages are never going to meet the cost of living or the standard of living here in California. There was a lot I was going to say, but I couldn't say it any better than Consuelo said it. I'm imploring all of you who think this Board of Supervisors cares about you, please wake up. They do not care about you. They are using you as pawns to steal our taxpayers' dollars. Tara Lawson-Remer is impressed by your courage, by the courage of people who came to speak up, who were fired unjustly. Well, I'm so happy you're impressed, Tara. I think you should be more impressed by Audra being here after her vicious and brutal assault by the sheriff who is still here. Now, that's impressive. When people voice their opposition, they are treated unfairly and unjustly and like non-humans. They're treated with a total lack of respect and a lack of dignity. But that's okay because it doesn't follow your agenda, so it's okay. Let's talk about people fired unjustly. Let's talk about the police, the firefighters, and the healthcare workers who were fired for not getting their jab. Is that the kind of justice you want to mete out on people? So once you get these janitorial staff booked on, then you'll mete out your same justice to them. Let's talk about all the hospitals who are abusing their healthcare workers by giving them way more patients than what they should carry on their licenses. Is that okay? That's okay because they're not Black or Latino, all of it. So it's okay.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hello, my name is Derek Robinson, and I am a senior researcher and policy advocate at the Center on Policy Initiatives, and we support item number 32, the Contracting Standards Board Policy for Janitorial, Landscaping, and Security Services. We believe that contractors with the county must pay wages and benefits that support workers and their families. The county also has the responsibility to protect people directly employed by the county or contracted to work for the county and should provide training and resources that uphold workers' rights and protect them from contractors who repeatedly violate worker standards. For too long and throughout the entire COVID pandemic, these sectors of the workforce has been underpaid and vulnerable to labor law violations. This workforce also consists of some of the most exploited workers in San Diego County, including women, people of color, and workers who regularly cross the border. This policy stipulates that contracts awarded in these sectors will include a payment into a wage theft fund. This fund will provide workers who have faced wage theft and or retaliation an opportunity to be paid during and after investigation of worker standard violations. Considering how prevalent these violations are, this fund is crucial to protecting workers who speak out and file complaints about wage theft, discrimination, and retaliation. This fund is widely a supported concept. In fact, the National Employment Law Project's research shows 92% of Californians support a hardship fund for workers fired for raising workplace violations. The training provided to contracted workers regarding their rights and labor standards throughout this ordinance will encourage workers to report contract violations. When workers know their rights, have strong laws protecting them, receive organizational and financial support when they are retaliated against, and can count on government agencies to help enforce these laws, workers are more likely to speak up about dangerous and illegal practices in their workplaces and take steps to protect themselves and their coworkers. The county has a responsibility to ensure that the businesses they contract with provide livable wages and that the public dollars provide quality jobs for the region. Businesses contracting with the county must also provide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from the next caller.
This is Dean. If you want to stop these evil contractors from stealing the wages of the janitors, so why not just hire the janitors directly, and then you don't have to have the evil contractors stealing wages? And it doesn't make sense if you withhold money from the contractors, how are they supposed to pay their employees? The other issue is you guys, instead of wasting money on stuff, pay it to the janitors if you find it so important. Because, for example, instead of to some contract paying tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or whatever it is or more for a mobile fingerprint unit, go on eBay, buy a finger scanner and put it in one of the vehicles that you got for the mobile COVID vaccinations that are probably not being used anymore, and don't waste money that could be paid to the janitors and the people who you want to give more money. So instead of just doing some dog and pony show, just hire them directly, don't waste money, and then everybody will be happy. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Honestamente, estos supervisores están locos. La verdad, truth. These have been the union professional beggars, to quote Alan C. When you coming back, Alan? There's still work to be done here. The county has 16 janitorial contracts, 4 landscaping contracts, and 1 security contract for about 1,080 employees. The total annual contract value is over $40 million. And the item says there's an establishment of the wage theft fund. Wage theft? Care to explain? The equity statement says, quote, during the height of our county's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, our janitorial, landscaping, and security staff never stopped showing up to work, end quote. You mean they did their jobs and that they got paid to do? Whoa! Personally, I haven't seen any beautiful flower landscaping at any county facilities. What's up with that? I do want to know if someone in the building right now can attest that the bathrooms are actually clean or not. I would refer to the toilet expert Audra on that one. Maybe a county janitor would suffice, but I'm not sure that they're as qualified as her. That's a tough one. With my red hat and dinosaur Yoshi, I could check the plumbing. I mean, according to the fiscal impact statement, these workers are going to cost taxpayers an extra $2.5 million next year and $13.5 million more in 2027. So that sounds like $53.5 million in 2027 for 1,080 employees. I think I figured out the wage theft. And I just want to explain that this comment is what happens when the important items are shoved into the consent calendar and the useless toilet crap is given discussion time.
Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. We'll go to Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you, Chair. Primero que nada, quiero darles las gracias por estar aquí con nosotros y recordarles que definitivamente no son invisibles, que los vemos y los apreciamos. Y que estoy de acuerdo con todos ustedes que aquellos con los que tengamos contratos los deben de tratar no solamente con dignidad y respeto, pero también pagarles lo que se merecen. Quiero dar las gracias a todos los trabajadores que están bajo ese contrato por su esfuerzo, dedicación y todas sus contribuciones al condado de San Diego, y también por su valor de hacer todo lo posible para que los traten con esa dignidad y respeto que se merecen. Yo sé que a veces es difícil, a veces tiene uno un poco de miedo porque pues no sabe uno cómo va a responder las compañías o las personas, pero quiero que sepan que no están solos. El trabajo que ustedes hacen es fundamental para el éxito de esta organización. Siempre he dicho que nuestros trabajadores son el corazón de la organización y es hora de devolver ese compromiso creando para todos ustedes estándares para que estos contratos que el condado da proteja todos los derechos de los trabajadores. Yo los vi, nunca dejaron de trabajar cuando estaba COVID, cuando las cosas estaban tan malas. Aquí estaban ustedes asegurándose que nosotros estuviéramos bien y que estuviéramos saludables, así que muy agradecida con ustedes. Sé que muchos de ustedes han trabajado para el condado por más de 10 años y hoy estamos mandando un fuerte mensaje que de cualquier empresa que quiera trabajar con el condado no solamente va a respetar a sus empleados y tratarlos con dignidad, pero les va a pagar con equidad. So I want to thank my colleagues. For those of you that don't speak Spanish, I'm going to go ahead and say it in English. I want to make sure to thank my colleagues for introducing this important item. And I want to thank all of you, all of the contracted workers for their contributions to the County of San Diego. I know that every single one of you and the people that work here are at the county, either directly or through a contractor, are proud of the work that they do and are critical to the success of this organization. I've always said that our employees are the heart of this organization.
And when speaking to our janitorial, landscaping, and security staff, they all express pride in their work, many of them sharing their commitment to the county for more than 10 years. It's time that we reciprocate that commitment and ensure a comprehensive contracting standard. I want to make sure that you know that you are not invisible, that we see you, we are proud of you, and we're going to continue to fight on your behalf. Today, by supporting this measure, I think we send a strong message to companies that want to do business with the county that we have high expectations on how they treat and compensate our workers. With that, I'm happy to support this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you to everyone who turned out today. Thank you for your work. We know you just want to work hard. You want to be treated fairly. You want to have the basic dignity and respect that you deserve. It's something our county must do, and it's something that, with an affirmative vote today, we will be doing moving forward. And so thank you for all of your hard work. We have a motion by myself, seconded by Supervisor Lawson-Remer. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
Thank you all very much. We're going to go to item 33, fiscal year 22-23, first quarter operational plan status report and budget adjustments. I will turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Also note for the record that this item is being heard concurrently with item 1 on the Fire Protection District agenda.
Thank you, Chair. If we can just have a moment to get settled. Good afternoon, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. I'm here today to give an update on economic conditions, budget performance.
I'm sorry, please pause. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm here today to give an update on economic conditions, budget performance through September 30th, and the latest Retirement Association valuation. I'm joined today by the Executive Group Finance Director, Amy Thompson of the Health and Human Services Agency, who will discuss FEMA reimbursement status, as well as the Auditor and Controller, Tracy Drager, who recently completed the annual comprehensive financial report, and she'll share an update with you. We'll start by talking about several economic indicators, beginning with the interest rates in the United States. As the Federal Reserve is monitoring inflation, it's hiked up the effective federal funds rate to try to control prices. As the Fed fund rate rises, interest rates, including mortgage rates, will follow. In November, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage increased to 7%, up about 4 percentage points from a year ago. The impact of recent interest rate hikes are apparent in certain areas of the economy, and some impacts can also be seen in the state tax collections. So we'll turn our attention to the state budget outlook. According to the Legislative Analyst Office latest forecast, the state is projected to face a budget deficit of $24 billion in fiscal year 23-24, primarily due to lower revenue estimates. Deficits are estimated to decline from $17 billion to $8 billion in the out years of the forecast, and based on historical experience, should a recession occur soon, revenues could be $30 to $50 billion below the revenue outlook. And since we're so heavily reliant on funding sources from intergovernmental sources, if the legislature decides to cut spending, this will of course be a major concern for us here at the county. And so we'll be monitoring the governor's proposed budget here in January very closely to understand how and when the state plans to address this issue and what that means to us here locally. Looking at our local economy, the inflation rate for San Diego had been at 8.2% over the last year. This is data that was as of September. However, this morning, the most recent data that was released now shows that this figure is at 6.7%, so down slightly, which is good news for San Diegans, and that's primarily due to the lower fuel costs that we're all enjoying right now. As the Fed continues to fight inflation, it's anticipated to increase the federal funds rate by 50 basis points at its December meeting, which will be going on here very soon. This morning's release of inflation data supports this assumption, and the real question really is what's going to happen early next year. Will the Feds raise rates by 50 or 25 basis points? Will they start to slow down on these rate increases, and how will that affect us going forward here for 2023 and 24? And as for our local unemployment, there are still just under 50,000 unemployed as of the latest data that was captured in October. You can see here illustrated in this chart with San Diego County at the same rate as the pre-pandemic unemployment levels in February 2020. The labor force in October was about 21,000 individuals smaller than it was before COVID. But for all intents and purposes, if somebody wants a job in San Diego County, they definitely can get one. And for everyone who's watching, if you want a job here in San Diego County, we are also hiring. Please go to our website. It's an excellent organization. So moving on to housing, San Diego has had one of the fastest appreciating home prices in the nation. As you can see here on this chart, the change in home prices illustrated in the teal box here on the right. It's just been a roller coaster since the start of the pandemic. In April of 2022, the San Diego median home price was at its peak at $975,000. And home prices are starting to decline again with rising interest rates. In October, the median home price decreased by 12% from the peak to $860,000. And although home prices are coming down, higher interest rates still equate to bigger monthly payments, so homes are not necessarily becoming more affordable here. And in response, local year-over-year sales activity has also been on the decline, and that's what you see here in this chart on the left. So that's significant here. And that leads into the next discussion, which is property taxes and assessed value. And so property taxes, of course, are one of the most reliable and stable sources of revenue that we have here for the county that drives our discretionary investments. And this chart shows a very steady historical assessed value growth and continued project assessed value growth. We are not projecting a decline in property tax values at this time, but certainly it's a risk that we're always mindful of. But most recently, the very strong housing market resulted in a very large increase in assessed value growth, most of which was associated with that significant increase in sales activity that we saw on that previous slide, that chart up or peak up. Now, with mortgage rates rising and the high median home prices, this same level of sales activity is not anticipated to continue. The assessor is currently planning to review properties that sold during that peak period to make downward adjustments to values. Now, while these adjustments downwards won't impact us as we start planning for 23-24, they will impact us in our outlook going forward longer term. So we have adjusted, based on the assessor's recommendation, our outlook for assessed value growth from what was 4% in fiscal year 24, 25, and beyond, down to 2% in fiscal years 24, 25, and 25, 26, and 3% thereafter. And that will have an impact on our outlook. Favorably, we have increased the 23-24 assessed value outlook from 4% to 5% based on conversations with the assessor. So some positive news there, but that downward adjustment in the out years will have an impact on our outlook. And this is something that we're looking at actively as we're working on our long-term financial planning activities, which are underway right now. So moving on to budget performance for the current fiscal year. In the first quarter, which again ended on September 30th, the county was projecting positive results from budget for all funds of $68 million. All of these variances are just a small fraction of the county's total budget at less than 1%, just 0.7%. And the $68 million is largely reflected from the general fund, since there's a very minimal variance outside of the general fund. Effectively, it's flat. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. There are some large variances within that. So focusing here on this slide, this chart shows the anticipated sources of fund balance within the general fund, broken down by business group. These projections include the salary and benefit projections as of September 30th. And of course, we have a higher than normal vacancy rate in the county, but departments are aggressively working to fill those vacancies as quickly as possible. We will continue to monitor these activities throughout the year and adjust our projections as appropriate. General purpose revenue is expected to be $47.9 million higher than expected, and that's primarily due to better than anticipated assessed value growth, as well as interest earnings, which are also coming in above budget. In addition, there are overall positive variants of fund balance in all the groups. The general fund year-end fund balance projection includes the assumption that the county will continue to incur COVID-19 costs and anticipates the receipt of additional federal and state emergency response funding, including FEMA revenue, to continue response efforts. In total, the projected general fund balance represents just 1% of the total general fund budget. Looking outside of the general fund, outside of the general fund, we're looking at effectively flat projections, but there are large variances within that, starting with the Public Liability Internal Service Fund, which is projected to exceed budget due to greater than anticipated settlement cost. There are positive variances in special revenue funds, including the Proposition 172 Special Revenue Fund, the Department of Public Works Road Fund, the library, as well as positive variances in special district funds in DPW, as well as the Airport Enterprise Fund. Moving on from our current year projections, we'll take a look back at the final performance of the previous fiscal year 21-22. And with that, I'd like to introduce Tracy Drager, the county's auditor and controller, who will talk about the annual comprehensive financial report.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Good afternoon. I'd like to update you on the recently completed financial statements for the County of San Diego as of June 30, 2022. This slide includes this year's most recent balance sheet data and last year's data for comparison. Overall, fund balances have increased slightly from $2.2 billion to $2.3 billion. This is shown on the bottom row of the table on the left. I'll briefly describe the categories that show up on the balance sheet, which are located in the far left column. The not liquid category represents non-cash county resources, such as inventory, supplies, and loans that are being repaid to the county. The specific legal use is a category of fund balance where a law or funding agency requires the county to use a revenue stream for a particular purpose. The county can only use these funds for their legally stated purposes. Earmarked is a grouping of fund balance by which the board has taken specific action, usually through the budget, to spend funds. Examples of earmarked funds include construction projects and service contracts, and usually cross multiple fiscal years. The last category is the general fund reserve. While this category can be used for any legal purpose, through the administrative code, the board has used this designation to account for emergencies, economic volatility, and mitigating long-term risks. You'll note that there are two subcategories being displayed in this table: the general fund reserve minimum and the available general fund reserve. The general fund reserve minimum is the amount required to be maintained as a reserve by the administrative code. The second subcategory, available general fund reserve, is the amount in excess or in deficit of the reserve. Focusing on the overall general fund reserve, which changed most materially, you'll note that the total amount has decreased from $661 million to $616 million. According to the administrative code, the county is required to maintain a minimum general fund reserve of $837 million. In comparing the 2022 actual general fund reserve of $616 million to the minimum of $837 million, the county fell short of its minimum reserve target by $221 million. This higher than expected shortfall is being driven by continued delays in reimbursement from FEMA, which Amy will discuss in a moment, as well as large mark-to-market adjustment required to recognize unrealized losses on investments as of June 30, 2022. While we anticipate that FEMA will reimburse the counties for prior year costs, which will help towards restoring the minimum, the risk of FEMA delays may constrain our balance sheet going forward. As you may recall, certain financial provisions of the administrative code are currently suspended and tied to the local emergency declaration. The effect of this action included allowing unassigned fund balance to be drawn below the minimum target and suspending requirements to use debt savings and certain unanticipated revenues to cash fund capital or send voluntary contributions to SD-SARA. As noted on the previous slide, our unassigned general fund reserve is now below the minimum target, but we are actively monitoring our projections and FEMA reimbursements so that we can plan accordingly in future budgets to meet the minimum reserve once the local emergency declaration is lifted. I'll now turn it over to Amy Thompson, HHSA Executive Finance Director, to give a little more detail on current emergency response spending and FEMA reimbursements.
Thank you, Tracy. The county's current spend rate for the COVID-19 response is about $1 million per week. This is a decrease of $800,000 from the last report to your board of $1.8 million per week in August. There are further planned demobilization and response transition plans underway, which will continue to decrease this weekly spend amount. Several of our testing sites are being converted to antigen testing from COVID PCR testing this month, and tracing temporary staff are continuing to be demobilized in phases. Additional wind downs will occur as long as cases continue to not significantly impede the hospital system. 50% of the weekly spend is estimated to be FEMA eligible, with the remainder covered by ARPA funds. We will continue to monitor testing and vaccination support needs closely throughout the year as we plan for ARPA use in fiscal year 2023-24. On the next slide, I will review the current status of FEMA claims. So our first quarter projections assume total costs of $426 million eligible for FEMA through December of this year, when FEMA eligibility was initially anticipated to end. We are currently hearing that it will likely extend into the new calendar year. The $426 million includes $403 million of costs incurred during prior fiscal years, and a projection of $23 million in costs for the current fiscal year. 7 projects, estimated at $180 million, have been obligated or approved by FEMA. After accounting for the amounts already obligated, a balance of $246 million remains. The first quarter general fund projections presented today assume another $141 million will be obligated or approved in time to record for fiscal year 2022-23 financial statements. And the remaining $105 million will be deferred to future years. We know that the final FEMA closeout could take several years. FEMA withholds 10% for all projects until closeout is complete. The $105 million projected to defer accounts for this 10% withhold, as well as for current year projects still in process, and also includes an assumption that some FEMA approvals for prior year costs could extend into the next fiscal year. Amounts received in future years will generate fund balance in the year reimbursement is received. I'll now turn it back over to Ebony, who will close out with an update on retirement and the path forward.
Thanks, Amy. I monitor and provide frequent updates to your board on the position of the retirement fund, since it's such a significant cost driver for the county. The chart on the top of this slide provides a summary of key indicators from the June 30th valuation in comparison to last year's report. And the chart at the bottom of this slide includes historical returns, including fiscal year-to-date performance of the fund. So as you can see in the SD Sarah annual investment returns chart, we had a high return in 2021, but saw a negative return in 2022, causing a decrease in the funded ratio and an unrecognized investment loss. Earlier this year, changes in actuarial assumptions were also recommended by SD Sarah's actuary, Siegel, and ultimately adopted by SD Sarah's board. The assumption changes and fund performance resulted in a decrease to the funded ratio, an increase to the unfunded actuarial accrued liability, and the average employer contribution rate is increasing as well. And the fund has gone from having unrecognized gains of roughly $1.3 billion in the pipeline to having $1.4 billion of unrecognized losses in the pipeline. The most recently published data from SD Sarah's monthly risk return report shows preliminary investment returns of just under, basically flat or negative 0.8% through October of this year. Now, preliminary information shows that November returns were favorable, and as such, they're preliminarily in the 4% range fiscal year to date, and those numbers will be finalized later this week. We'll continue to very carefully monitor the fund performance for our long-term financial planning purposes. So, as we've talked about in our current economic environment, things are just very challenging. Revenues from the state could be flat or cut significantly. Internal cost structures for the county related to retirement and other fixed costs are also going up. And inflation, although it seems to be heading in the right direction, it still continues to be a challenge for us here on the work front, on the home front, and everywhere that we look. It's still unclear if Fed actions will save the day, or whether inflation has peaked, or if it will persist. In October, we presented a scenario in which the county could potentially have an ongoing deficit in the near future, in the next few years. And although there have been changes to economic conditions since that time, the outlook itself generally has not changed. Under the leadership of your board, however, this county team is focused on ensuring that we're able to maintain the service levels to meet the needs of the community as we move forward, and ideally do that without cuts. But this will mean that our ability to grow, at least in the short term, will be extremely limited as we head into this upcoming budget season. We'll be working very hard as a team in the coming months to develop long-term management strategies and plan to provide your board with an update on those strategies and our outlook here in the near future. Subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Let's hear from our public speakers on this item.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 5 requests to speak on this item, 2 in person and 3 requesting to speak by phone. Also note that we did not receive any comments on this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 33 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. Both are in opposition of this item. As your name is called, please come forward. I'd like to invite Audra and Michael Brando. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
I use the name Audra. You just basically got to move your money around so that you guys spend your money so that you get more money. But if you're always in a deficit, you guys get billions. How many, who knows how much San Diego's got since the beginning of San Diego, trillions of dollars probably, right? And you keep getting money and nothing gets better. Is that weird? Or is that's right? Because it's like, let's just keep giving them money so that San Diego just keeps going to hell. It's so great. Because if you don't spend all your money, why are they going to give you more money? Because they're going to be like, why should we give them more money if they can't handle the money we give them? It's the people's money. And you don't care what people say. You all look down. You don't give a shit that people come in here. Let's hear from our constituents. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. It's like we're virtue signaling that we care about you guys. We're doing this to make the county better. And we're going to get all this money, and we're going to just fix homelessness, and there's going to be no AIDS, and it's just going to be super fantastic. We're going to put all these people in concentration camps, right? Just silence the people when they come and talk. But all this is just to better the county, and we're doing it for you guys, and we care about you. We care. I'd like to see that at some point because it's actually hilarious to hear you guys say that all the time. I feel like I'm at a comedy show all the time. When you talk about justice and equality, I don't even think you guys know what that shit means.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Eleanor, I just want to ask the Board of Supervisors why you are stealing our money. You just keep stealing and raising the taxes and raising everything, and we just have to say yes. Well, this is really not for you because you probably know about this. But for everybody listening, no matter which side you're on, whether you love our Board of Supervisors or whether you have utter contempt for these tyrants, I urge you to read a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. It talks about the Federal Reserve, which I heard them mentioning in their budget report. Just so you know, I'm going to read a little bit from it. What is the Federal Reserve System? The answer may surprise you. It is not federal and there are no reserves. Furthermore, the Federal Reserve banks are not even banks. In actual fact, the Federal Reserve was created at a secret meeting in 1910, and the idea was to merge the 5 strongest banks so that they could have a total monopoly on our money, and they could basically create money out of nothing. It's time that Americans woke up. The Federal Reserve needs to be disbanded. Americans need to say no to paying tax. Our Board of Supervisors is corrupt, and they are stealing our money while they sit up there and pretend that they are holier than everybody else. Let's stop everything. Stop the scam about putting in money for COVID. I heard somebody cough at the beginning of the presentation. Does that mean we're in another emergency now? Let's stop this COVID scam, because it seems to be very lucrative for Big Pharma and for our Board of Supervisors. But anyway, we don't have to worry, because once people start dying, which they already have from these COVID injections, we won't need so much money anymore because people will be dead and we won't have people to spend money on. Is that your agenda?
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
This is Dean. I wanted to speak about this year's annual comprehensive financial report, but it's not online, so I'm going to say some things about last year's. First of all, just so everybody knows, they need to look at the comprehensive financial report and not the budget, because the budget is just how much who's ever making it decides that they should spend. The actual net position of the county at the end of 2021 for governmental activities was $3,123,000,000, and for business activities was $255,460,000. So they're not having a cash crisis like they want you to think. The other thing that I was looking at is in your report for last year, because I don't have this year's report, on page 84, on your investments, you've got a total investments of $11,900,000,000, and of those investments, you've got $2,318,000 of commercial paper that's paying an interest rate of 0.02 to 0.09, and that has a higher, the rating is lower, which means it has a higher risk than the U.S. Treasury notes, which are paying a higher interest rate, 1.13 to 2.75. So why would you put so much more money in a higher risk investment that's paying less? And back to Audra's comment about shuffling money around to charge us more. So we're paying taxes and we're getting taxed on the national debt so that counties can buy the U.S. Treasury notes, make an interest investment on them, and then charge us more taxes. How does that make sense?
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
There is no notice. You don't make that money. It can't be repaid. The debt is perpetual.
Truth. Ebony, inflation ain't going nowhere. And I want you to know that I thought about working for the county. Remote working for 2 years running or being the ethics and compliance director sounds pretty good. Except you got to take orders from the bad guy. Not my thing. This item will increase the overall budget by about $50.5 million. Not so thrifty, supervisors. The item says, quote, the county will continue to incur COVID-19 costs and anticipates additional federal and state funding, including FEMA revenue, to continue response efforts, end quote. Once again, COVID ain't going nowhere, just like inflation. Some expenditures include $2 million to purchase one fire emergency ladder truck, $252,000 partly to increase free food distribution, unlisted one-time expenses of an unknown amount in the Board of Supervisors offices. What's that? $3.3 million more to the Department of Environmental Health and Quality Fund balance commitment, $330,000 for a South County zip line, and over $14 million just for park spending. I'll also point out a transfer of over $1.1 million from the Sheriff's Department to the Hall of Justice for security improvements, which, considering the Sheriff's general lack of justice, is pretty ironic to say the least. You sheriffs keep losing money from the supervisors you lick the boots of. Good. None of you deserve a dime. But I'll certainly give you my 2 cents any day. With, of course, no response from Sheriff Anthony Ray to complaints about brutality by Sheriff Gonzalez that happened at the November 15th meeting for the world to see. Ray's a hypocritical liar, unworthy of the proclamation today. Good riddance. And I look forward to justice ruling against you one day in Gonzalez. What is that, Nick?
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations in item 33 in Fire Protection District number 1. Is there a second? Second. A motion by myself, second by Supervisor Anderson. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
We're going to go to item number 34, request to apply for and accept grant funding from the Cannabis Equity Grants Program for local jurisdictions. We'll give staff a moment to reset, and then we'll hear the presentation.
Chair Fletcher, Board of Supervisors. Today I'm joined by Brandon Lewis, our Social Equity Program Manager, to present an update on the Cannabis Social Equity Program and propose actions in support of the county's largest socially equitable cannabis program. We'll begin with a brief overview of the past actions that have guided our office in the development of this project. On January 27, 2021, your board directed staff to develop a new social equity program and secure grant funding to support implementation that will include numerous elements to prioritize equity, access, and business opportunities to help rectify the injustices caused by the war on drugs and be in place prior to the issuance of the first permit. On March 3, 2021, your board directed the Office of Equity and Racial Justice to lead the development of the framework and strategy, including grant funding needed to initiate a social equity program and coordinate this with the land use permitting system being developed by Planning and Development Services. A critical next step in the program was to conduct a countywide social equity assessment for the commercial cannabis program. In May of 2021, our office received the grant award to conduct this assessment. Since receiving the grant, our office has worked to deliver an equity assessment to inform the county's social equity program, framework, and development. The social equity assessment was prepared by Women's Work Consulting, LLC. The county hired this third-party vendor to study the impacts of cannabis criminalization and the war on drugs in communities in San Diego County and provide policy recommendations for creating social equity in the county's adult use recreational cannabis market. The recommendations will be taken into consideration and reviewed by the county. Implementation of the recommendations included in this assessment will depend on a thorough review of legal viability and approval by the Board of Supervisors. Women's Work conducted robust community engagement to gain feedback from our San Diego communities. They conducted 28 interviews, 5 focus groups. They received 271 responses from a survey. And lastly, they conducted 6 listening sessions that covered all 5 supervisory districts. The assessment was completed in October of this year. So now I'll turn it over to Brandon Lewis to discuss findings from the assessment and next steps.
Social equity findings and recommendations. The key findings from the report focus on data analysis that showed the need for advancing racial equity, continuing community engagement, and creating robust outreach. The recommendations focus on the following areas: sharing power with stakeholders by engaging stakeholder equitability, honoring data sovereignty, and building community awareness and education, ending cannabis criminalization and opening opportunity for direct impacted populations by expanding expungement efforts, investing in diversion and restorative justice and non-carceral regulation enforcement, creating an accessible and responsive social equity entrepreneurs program by defining program eligibility based on disproportionately impacted communities and permitting cannabis businesses through a transparent, equity-focused process. Financially supporting socially equity entrepreneurs by increasing access to capital and providing equitable technical assistance, tax structure, and zoning policy. Reinvesting resources in community development, economic justice, health, and sustainably funding the Social Equity Entrepreneurs Program. Over the next few months, the Office of Equity and Racial Justice will review the assessment in coordination with County Council and the Land Use and Environmental Group and develop recommendations from the assessment to present to the board for program adoption and implementation in the summer of 2023. Next steps. With the completion of the social equity assessment, the county is eligible to apply for Type 2 cannabis equity grant funding offered by the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, or GOBIZ. These grant funds would allow for direct grants and or loans to social equity applicants. If awarded, these grant funds could be used for rent, leases, application and licensing fees, regulatory compliance, build-out, equipment, and legal assistance. Today's actions include a recommendation to the board to adopt a resolution supporting the establishment of a social equity program as required by the grant solicitation. Beginning early next year, we will host outreach and engagement sessions for impacted communities throughout the region. In early 2023, OERJ will put out a request for proposal to find a vendor to implement various aspects of the social equity program. Lastly, OERJ will work with County Council and the Planning and Development Services to finalize recommendations for implementation of the social equity program and the overarching socially equitable cannabis program to bring forward to the board in summer 2023. Recommendations. In summary, there's still more work ahead in the development of the county's social equity program to continue the progress already underway towards its development. Staff recommends the board receive the social equity assessment for commercial cannabis, authorize the Office of Equity and Racial Justice to apply and accept grant funds that can be utilized to assist local equity applicants and licensees through grant and or loan programs, and adopt a resolution supporting the establishment of a social equity program as required by the GOBIZ Cannabis Equity Grants Program grant solicitation. Subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate all the ongoing efforts and work in this field, and I'm fully supportive of what we're doing. I'm happy to make a motion to approve the recommendations. Second by Vice Chair Vargas. Let's hear from our public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 12 requests to speak on item 34, 4 in person and 8 requesting to speak by phone. Also note for the record that we received 3 e-comments, all in opposition. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 34 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition to this item. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward Audra, Mark, Michael Brando, and Renee. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Use the name Audra. I've seen you at your office before, right? And you want to do justice and equity and things like that, right? But yet, you're probably not going to look into that assault that happened here, right? Right. I got you. It's cool. It's cool. Because I know what you guys are about. You're not about equity or justice. And you want to, address the war on drugs by punishing the people that are selling cannabis or growing it. I mean, the fact that you guys, it's like me coming to you, Helen, and be like, hey, we're going to pay you $400,000 a year, right? But you're only going to take home maybe $100,000. You cool with that? Because, I mean, you guys are criminals up here, but we're trying to do justice for the rest of the people. And so, I mean, you're just only going to be able to take home that. Is that feasible to you? Because these people bring in tens of thousands of dollars and take home such a minimal amount because of all of the fees and all the crap that's going on. So I don't understand how that's like justice and fairness when you're treating them totally different than any other entity that runs a business. You guys wouldn't want to run a business that way. You'd be like, that's not fair. That doesn't seem fair to me. But yet you sit up here on your pedestal and you dictate what happens to people, and you talk about equity and justice and fairness and all this stuff that I'm like, I swear you don't even know what it means. If I was black or Mexican or some other freaking, like, there would be an uproar that happened to me or anybody. But it's like we sit here and we throw around these words that mean nothing. And there is no justice or equity or fairness in anything in this agenda. You're robbing these people. And you don't want to be robbed, but you don't mind doing it to them.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Renee. Cannabis and social equity in one sentence is not a good sign. So you had an agenda today to declare fentanyl health crisis, which is exploding due to our open borders, which you ignore. But now you want to accept bribes in the form of grants from the Cannabis Equity Social Program. What is that? And is not marijuana called the gateway drug that leads to more serious crimes? You say you care for our people and our youth in this county, but tell me how this helps. Is this not a complete inconsistency? Inconsistencies are not a way to be truly transparent, that which you claim to be. Didn't you hear that young 13-year-old girl earlier who so articulated how drugs have affected her young life? This is just, it's all over the map.
I'm going to call for Mark and Michael Brando. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you'll hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. And remind the callers, they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll start with our first caller.
Good afternoon, this is Peggy Walker. And with all due respect, several items on today's agenda related to equity have proved to be unequitable. Earlier, you approved consent item 12 to allow illegal drug use in public funded housing. This will have profound inequitable effects on those living in subsidized housing. The vast majority are non-drug using. Many are minority residents who do not want their children exposed to illegal drug behavior, to drug dealing, trafficking, or to products left or dropped where they can be accessed inadvertently by young children. While accommodating drug users, where is the equity for these people, innocent of any illegal activity, who simply want a safe place to live? You address the fentanyl crisis with no reference to the source, a porous border. Where is the equity for victims of policy that allows the continuous flow of a deadly drug into our county? This leaves many of us scratching our heads about the current definition of equity. It's extremely discouraging that equity seems to refer only to those who want to engage in drug dealing for profit, or those who want to recreationally engage in drug use illegally. Whatever happened to equity for victims of these activities? Please be mindful that there are two sides to the idea of equity in the highly controversial issue of drug use.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon, Board. Kathleen Lippis here. The county's acceptance of marijuana grants undermines one of the most important Prop 64 promises to voters, to protect local land use authority. The state's Cannabis Advisory Committee, the CAC, was created to regulate the marijuana industry. However, it does not regulate the industry so much as partner with it. It strives to remove any and all barriers to establishing marijuana businesses. And one of those barriers is the use of land use authority to oppose marijuana businesses. The CAC's strategy to eliminate this barrier is to use grants to do so, to offer bribes in the form of taxpayer grants, nearly $200 million to date, if they agree to permit marijuana businesses. The goal of the marijuana industry is to profit from growing their marijuana customer base, especially among youth and young adults. Despite the harms of mental illness, addiction, academic failure, drug driving, fatalities, and poisonings, despite environmental destruction from growing marijuana and hemp, despite the industry's success in creating a dizzying array of ever-potent and enticing marijuana products to addict the most vulnerable youth and people of color, the county professes to be virtuously addressing issues of equity. In reality, it is a thinly veiled elitist assumption that marijuana businesses are what communities, vulnerable communities, treated inequitably now need. Authentic community members and parents never ask for marijuana businesses where their children could be employed. Please consider what they want. Ask them. Don't assume what you think they need. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Eleanor, social justice and equity with cannabis use? Where did you get this from? Did this Board of Supervisors go to the school of doublespeak, or are you just being schooled in Agenda 2030? It's very easy to jump on the bandwagon now once you see how profitable the marijuana industry is. So now you want a little bit of that too. So you will take our taxpayer money to give grants so that you can line your own pockets. Oh, this is really fair. This is really equitable. This is what we call social justice. This board does not care about the people they serve. You treat us with utter contempt. You don't care at all. You don't understand that you are supposed to be working for us. Instead, you think we are working for you. You have become tyrannical, and you all need to step down. I think that you should all step down immediately. When you pay people or protect them to come and speak, it seems like there are two sides to the story. But actually, nobody feels safe coming to talk at this board anymore. When the Board of Supervisors can condone a violent assault on a peaceful person who's just exercising her right to speak, what makes you think that we should trust you with our taxpayer money? So equity, social justice, all of this nonsense, this verbiage that you've made up, this needs to go. People, don't be fooled by this board. They are satanical, tyrannical demons.
That's right. Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hello, this is Kelly McCormick. I'm a public health educator, and I'm speaking in opposition to this item because, like you, I want to see social justice and equity, but I believe that is achieved through better educational opportunities and scholarships and workforce and career opportunities, not increasing the amount of marijuana commercialization and marketing. Studies show that youth are more likely to use when retail outlets are located nearby and when there is marijuana advertising. And drug use is a highway to a poorer outcome, not a better outcome for youth. So common sense and the data would indicate that promoting drug use is not the way to achieve equity. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Yeah, Paul Henkin. This is for you, Kevin. Happy holidays. Equity, it's really a fluid term these days. It almost means nothing, the way the board here implements it, certainly. I have a wacky idea. Why don't you hire a few pilots to distribute this marijuana all over the county and see whose pile disappears first? I think that's a great way to not only assess equity, but maybe even deliver a Christmas present in opposition to the Grinch. And I'm sure anyone whose name is Mary Jane will appreciate the present. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
This is Dean. I want to talk about this social equity program. First of all, when I was growing up, I was taught to accept people regardless of their race, religion, color, or anything like that, and to treat everybody equally. But now it's been turned on its head, because now there's all these grants that people can get because of the color of their skin, and other people can't get because of the color of their skin. That's not the right thing to do. The second thing is, what the social Department of Control Cannabis Equity Program is doing, it's giving people of color, which I guess you choose what people have color, and giving them a grant to start a cannabis business or an interest-free loan, which is federally illegal. So you're claiming you want to help these people of color, but you're setting them up to commit federal crimes. In your report, you talk about how they're getting more arrested, and that's what it seems like it's doing, just helping people to get arrested. I'm not saying cannabis should be illegal, but you shouldn't be as a state, you shouldn't be helping people of color or any people or people who you want to support break federal laws, because that's going to cause them problems, because they're going to end up basically being one of your statistics that you talk about in your reports about how they're getting more arrests and more problems with the law. So the social cannabis equity program seems a little bit ridiculous, but if you want to do it, open it up to everybody, not just certain races. I mean, that's completely ridiculous. The other thing is there should be social justice and equity for women, too. Women come to talk at the Board of Supervisors.
We'll now hear from the next caller.
Truth. Can I sell my Christmas present, Paul? I need to get some money. Rectify injustices caused by the war on drugs by promoting drugs to those same victims, and taxing the profit right out of the potential business. And also rectify injustices caused by the war on drugs by declaring a war on fentanyl drugs and starting the cycle all over again. Women's Work Consulting was contracted to complete the social equity assessment for commercial cannabis for the county. They literally crossed out the E in the word women because men are bad. Their website says, quote, if you identify as a white woman, you are in the toxic loop of perfectionism, niceness at all costs, and performative silence. Please pay the requested rate or more for any and all of the programs and events we host. If you identify as a BIPOC and or LGBTQIAP woman, open to the mystery of feminine energy. As a micro reparation, pay what you can. That reflects an anti-capitalist ideology. Consider paying less on the scale if you are a person who experiences racism, are a Black, Indigenous, or First Nations, brown, or otherwise non-white person, are transgender, or are gay/queer and experience discrimination and or violence regularly, are eligible for public assistance, are an unpaid community organizer, end quote. Audra, maybe I found something else you're entitled to besides assault by these cowardly sheriffs. There will also be cannabis equity grants available from the gruesome governor's office. But you know what would actually correct the injustice of those incarcerated for the criminalization of cannabis? let them out instead of the thieves and pedophiles. Did you supervisors ever think of that? Of course not, because there's no money in that obvious solution. Y'all are the thieves. That's what's obvious. Take the racism and shove it.
And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
We have a motion by myself, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
We're going to go to item number 35, an ordinance to amend various sections of the California Administrative Code related to fees for services by recorder and county clerk. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Motion by myself, second by Vice Chair Vargas. Let's hear from our public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 6 requests to speak on item 35, 3 in person and 3 by phone. Also note that we did not receive any comments on this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 35 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition to this item. I'd like to invite forward Audra, Mark, and Michael Broccato.
Use the name Audra. So, I mean, let's see. You guys want to double most of the fees, if not more on some of them, because you want full cost recovery for things that, you know, the citizens already pay for with their taxes, but whatever. You want to raise the hourly rate of staff nearly 50%. So great for you guys. That's so awesome, isn't it? Pats on the back. That's like, good for you. But what about everybody else? It's like, screw them, right? I mean, why does, you know, as long as you guys are getting paid and raising your salaries and things like that, that's good, right? It makes it look like you guys are doing something good for the people, right? But then what about, you know, places having to shut down, or, you know, people losing their jobs, or it's like, get a vaccine or you're going to be fired. Nathan, are you paying attention? Oh my gosh. It's so good to know that you're listening to people. You're so good at that. You're a very good listener, all of you, as you're all looking up. Oh, Nora, hey, what's up? How you doing? Did you have a good vacation? You weren't here when that happened to me. Did you enjoy watching it? Did you? When you're chair, if you are you going to do the same thing Nathan does? You're glad that they did that? You think that should happen to women? What about your mother, your sister, your best friend? If you had a daughter? It's good to know. It is good to know where you all stand. I wouldn't even wish that upon you.
Thank you. Final call for Mark or Michael Broccato. And Chair Fletcher, we had 3 requests to speak by phone, but I do not see any of the callers in the queue at this time.
We have a motion by myself, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas, to approve the recommendations in item 35. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
We're going to go to our final agenda item today, item 36, County Council authority to initiate receivership process. This was originally proposed by Supervisor Anderson. I'd like to offer if you'd like to make any comments. If not, we'll go to public speakers. Please.
When I first got elected to office, one of the biggest issues facing public safety in my district was the fact that we had well over 100 illegal pot shops, many of them operating with impunity. They had sign waivers, they had ads out. It was crazy. And I want to thank all of you because you put money in the budget to give law enforcement the tools they needed. And one of the problems was they kept reopening. The amount of money the illegal pot shops would earn was staggering. And so we were looking at attacking this problem from every issue, not just from law enforcement, but also from code enforcement. And so I just want to thank you all for your support in advance, for voting to give this to staff to have them bring it back. And today is the day that we now have an additional tool to shut down illegal pot shops in the unincorporated area. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's a motion.
That's a motion. All right. Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. I'm happy to second. I think it's another useful tool, and I appreciate all your work and leadership on shutting down the illegal dispensaries in the unincorporated area. Let's hear from our public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 6 requests to speak on this item, 2 in person and 4 by phone. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 36 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition. I'd like to invite forward Audra and Michael Brando. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
I know, it never ends, right? There's always something to talk about. I identify as a male, Black Latino, and my name is Roberto. So you want to change the authority of the county council to allow them to resolve issues out of court, which is a little bit terrifying because I don't even feel like the county council, I mean, you guys in county council go in these circle jerks where it's like, oh, county council has to ask you what to do, and then you ask county council, and so there's like, I mean, why do they have the authority to basically go and address certain code violations and supervise rehab or property owners' expenses, you know, for health and safety code violations, whatever you guys find that you want to, you know? Are you gonna, is he gonna be able to kick people out of homes at this point, or she now, right? It's a she. We have a new county council. I just feel like wasting your time right now. Joel, did you really say that you think I should sue the county? Bet you won't admit that up here, will you? Just behind closed doors, right? Everyone likes to talk about stuff behind closed doors. We appreciate what you guys are doing. But then you get up here and it's like, arrest them, take them down, slam their head into the ground, and just get them out of here, right? It's good. It's good. You guys make yourself look so great. There's so much light in here. Not from you guys. You guys can't stand the light. You're like, you hate it so much that you have to silence it all the time. Can't wait for you to meet Jesus. It's going to be so great.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from those that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Happy holidays again for the last time today, I guess. So let's say that item 36, you want to put dilapidated, abandoned, or nuisance properties into county receivership. Which properties? Do you include deficient county properties? One, are these properties that county council just doesn't like? I mean, you can find some kind of nuisance on most properties. It sounds almost like a good way to set up a complaint and get a low-cost, affordable housing building at your disposal. Anyway, I think it's a kind of legally bad idea. Hope everyone has good holidays. Hope everyone does their homework, learns how to count properly. Anyway, I guess I'll be talking to you later, tomorrow probably. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. And I'll hear from the next caller.
Eleanor. So now you're coming after people's property. You've come after their health. You've come after their education. You've started dividing people by talking about racial injustice and social equity. And now you want to take people's property. And Joel, just in your previous comment, you're glad that the illegal pot shops have been shut down because it was staggering the amount of money they were making. It's staggering, isn't it? So now the board wants to jump on the bandwagon so you can make that money. You can make the money, you can take away people's properties, and you can do what you like. And by the way, when you put things up as a vote, do you really think we think you're actually voting on something? You've already made up your mind on every single item on the agenda before the meeting starts. So why are you going through all of this? Why are you wasting your time? Do you like sitting through all of this, even though you've already made up your own mind? You're ignoring what the people say. You don't care about what we think. But you just keep carrying on doing what you're doing, and you think that you can ride roughshod over the majority of the people. Then you pay a few of your trolls to come and talk on your behalf, and you think that this looks like an equal state of affairs. Well, it's not. We, the people, are fed up with you. We're more than fed up with you. You need to start working for us. You need to stop pretending that you care. You need to stop dividing people through your doublespeak of racial injustice and racial equity and affordable housing. There's no affordable housing for anybody in California, no matter the color of your skin, no matter who you are or what you are. So stop with all your doublespeak, please. And stop wasting our time and our money.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
It's true. Sorry I missed 35. All that mattered about it was freedom ain't free, and also big government is very tough. This item says, quote, state law allows the county to place into receivership certain dilapidated, abandoned, and or nuisance properties. The court directly controls the property via a court-appointed receiver. The county can supervise the property's rehabilitation at the property owner's expense, including, but not limited to, administrative costs and staff time, including attorney fees. Receiverships can potentially be used for properties with health and safety-related code violations, end quote. Does that mean these supervisors have the ability and or goal of taking over businesses that stay open during fraudulent emergencies? That county government will seize property to hammer it into the shape that they want to see, and to do it at the real property owner's expense. Which communist country do we live in again? Oh, America with a K, I got it. The item also says, quote, this ordinance will authorize county council to initiate receivership proceedings on behalf of county departments pursuant to state law, end quote. So apparently county council is going to be given an intentional loophole to go even further with property seizures. The item says a summary shall be published once with the names of the members of the board voting for and against it in the daily transcript. Isn't that so nice to inform everybody one time in a paper no one's ever heard of? What even is a newspaper is probably an appropriate question. Or maybe, what is the solution to theft by government called? Sic semper tyrannis.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
This is B. I think what's going on with additional receivership proceedings is disgusting. You're closing people's businesses. You're not allowing them to work because of COVID. And then when they can't afford to pay for their upkeep of the property because they're busy paying taxes and fees and more taxes and fees, instead of helping them, we take their properties away. Now, you guys like to talk about social justice and racial equity, but you don't put like a racial equity chart of the property you're taking. So I guess you only use that as convenience. You guys. I see how this is going. It's shut down, stop people from working, take away their properties, and when they have no money left, then they can live out in a 3D printed cabin in the woods, somewhere in the unincorporated areas, have mental health professionals giving them drugs. If they're lucky, maybe they'll get one of the naloxone dispensing machines in case they need that because of their opiate addiction, because they're so depressed that they got their house and their car and their livelihood taken away. Instead of doing that, you should help fix their houses, or maybe give them a tax break to fix their houses, because people don't want to go into disrepair. People's houses go into disrepair because they're put out of work, their businesses shut down before like the government. So we should not be stealing people's properties after this COVID stuff, because how would you guys like it if your houses were stolen? Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
We have a motion by Supervisor Anderson, seconded by myself. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
I'll go to my colleagues and ask if you have any updates, board committee reports, anything you would like to share or pertinent information on any boards and commissions anyone serves on. Not seeing any. We have 2 adjournments today. The first one will be from Supervisor Lawson Reamer, honoring Dion Rich.
Thank you so much. Dion Rich was a member of our community in District 3. He passed away on October 29th, 3 weeks after he had been diagnosed with cancer. My office had the opportunity to meet Dion during my tour with Meals on Wheels. He lived an incredible life, and indeed some stories we could all get a good laugh about. He was recently highlighted by the Union Tribune, and without a doubt, he was a man that lived life to the fullest. Dion never married, was a ticket barter by unofficial profession, and a great gate crasher by avocation. And he was terrific at both. If he ever actually paid for a professional or amateur service, doctors, lawyers, dentists, breakfast, lunches, dinners, I am unaware, said the San Diego Union Tribune. He crashed the Oscars and the after parties for years until he got a cease and desist letter. He crashed all over the world, including the Olympics, which I can tell you was one tough crash after the Munich murders. He was a good and loyal friend. His stories will be remembered through his book, Confessions of the World's Greatest Gatecrasher. Rest in peace, Dion Rich.
Thank you. Vice Chair Vargas will adjourn today's meeting in memory of Mauro Nemcini.
Mauro Giancarlo Nemcini. Thank you, Chair Fletcher. I would like to adjourn today's meeting in the memory of Mr. Mauro Giancarlo Nemcini. He was born in Montecatini, Italy, September 11th, 1931, and passed on December 6, 2022, at the age of 91. He brought his family to San Diego in 1991, where he started a tricultural business in the San Diego-Tijuana region, importing high-quality Italian products such as wines, olive oil, pasta, etc. His goal at the time was to provide San Diego and Tijuana with authentic Italian products while educating the retailers and consumers on it's not how much you pay, it's what you pay for. Mr. Nemcini also assisted in opening and operating several restaurants throughout San Diego County, always attempting to use his passion for service and food as a catalyst for lifelong lessons, not only for his employees, but patrons alike. Believing that one's success is not based on how much money was in their pocket, but knowing how to comfort yourself at the table was true success. Mr. Nemcini's passion for family and sports was evident through the support of his son's various sports endeavors, always offering his advice to the youth to look beyond sports and use his lessons being learned and apply them to life. Known for his long-winded lectures, but always revered as the father-grandfather figure to so many youth desired. In his later years, Mr. Nemcini would volunteer at various food pantry organizations throughout San Diego, offering up his knowledge of food, but also creating a rapport with the patrons showing support, whether it was through recipes or just lending an ear. There was always a life lesson silver lining. Family was everything to Mr. Nemcini, though his immediate family was small, consisted of his wife, Marisela, son Giancarlo, and daughter-in-law, Natalie. He had an ability to embrace all those that walked into his life and make them feel like family. To be loved by him was unconditional, truly came from the heart. Mr. Nemcini's true calling in life occurred on May 23, 2019, with the birth of his first grandchild. Never was there a doubt in his mind his new occupation in life was to babysit. He would never waver from his responsibility as nono, not only for his personal desire to be with his big boys, but wanting to ensure he gave his son and daughter-in-law a breather as parents, and did so all the way up to a week prior to his passing. Mr. Ncini was the definition of selflessness, always thinking of others and how he could help guide them through life with just a simple gesture or conversation. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends during this difficult time, and he will always be loved forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We will now resume non-agendized public communication.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 23 remaining requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, 8 in person and 15 requesting to speak by phone. For those that requested to speak by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you, as well as the speakers that requested to speak on closed session matters. Please dial into the conference line now using the instructions. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward Michael Brando, Gretchen Newsom, Consuelo, Fernando Lopez, Audra, Renee, Blair Overstreet, and Lucille Lynch. If I've called your name, please come forward. I ask you to please state your name for the audio record, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Consuelo. Saying one thing and doing another, that's hypocrisy. Saying many things and doing nothing, that's democracy. Remember who you are. Those who love truth in the last days of their system will be the most hated. Remember who you are. We are only responsible for what we say, not for what they understand. Remember who you are. You weren't meant to be slaves to their system, my brothers and sisters. You were meant to destroy their system. Remember who you are. They lied to your grandparents, which means they lied to your parents, in turn means your parents lied to you. And if you don't wake up to the truth, you're going to lie to your children. Generations of passing down lies is why we're still suffering. Wake up, my people. Last I say to you, the statist slaves, the ones who have bought into all of it, the biggest mistake you make with us conspiracy theorists is that you think we want to be right. Believe you me, we wish we were wrong. Know this, every single bit of chaos is being created on purpose, every last nonsensical bit. The purpose is for when the time comes, you will be begging for order. Their order. It's all orchestrated, all of it. The government is an intergenerational and highly complex criminal organization. The media is the marketing branch of this organization. Together they stand as the two pillars of the biggest scam in world history. Once you understand that, the solution wasn't created to solve the problem, but the problem was intentionally created for the solution to be rolled out. Then you will comprehend the magnitude of the evil.
Your time is up. Next speaker, please. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
My name's Renee. It has been a year since I have attended a meeting, but what I saw at the last meeting is what brings me here today, all day. We are now a police state. I showed a friend who has never attended a meeting here a video of Audra being attacked by that deputy. After watching the deputy, who is twice Audra's size, tackle her to the ground so hard that her shoe blew off. Then he forearmed her neck to pin her down. All the while, the other officers did nothing but looked uncomfortable, including a female deputy. Why not her to deal with Audra? My friend's first response was, what did she do and where is this? Imagine the look on my friend's face when I told her that this occurred at a Board of Supervisors meeting. No law was broken, no crime was committed, no weapon was brandished, no rap sheet, no long stand down. Audra stood up verbally for a woman who lost her husband due to doctor deaths and hospital protocol. She was crying out to the board, who sat pathetically blank as she told her story. She was reprimanded from Nathan for her emotional outbursts and Audra supported her. They got 3 strikes out. The board left chambers. It was paused. Then the attack. It's not an incident. It's not even arrest. There was none. It was an attack. It was an attack on her right to free assemble, freedom of speech, Fourth Amendment. Is this what we have become? I don't always agree with others' viewpoints. Example, Kevin. I don't care for his at all, simply based on his phone calls. But if he actually showed up and to speak, I certainly would not want him treated in this manner. Nathan, as chair, you set the tone for these meetings. I hold you responsible as much as I do the deputy, the sheriff. Shame on all four of you, including the four of the supervisors who have remained silent on this. My question now is, who's next? Will this happen again?
Next speaker, please.
Audra, I use the name Audra. That's what's so sad, is that who is next? You can do it to me all you want, but I worry about the other people in this county, especially the fact that you can give Anthony Ray a proclamation and he's sitting there gloating about how you guys have given him everything that he's asked for. It's because it's quid pro quo. You guys, go back and forth, but it's like the people come in here and you don't care what they say and you want to silence them. You want to weaponize everything against us, the police, behavioral health, fucking just everything. And it's just a very sad state because I honestly could care less about what you do to me, but I worry. That's why I fight like this, because I'm worried about what you're going to do to the rest of the community. I'll die fighting for freedom, no doubt. But I don't want you going and attacking the rest of the community for nothing. Because you're sitting here talking about in your agenda, like making felonies move to a lower defense, like getting people out of jails, all while you're putting people in jail for doing nothing wrong. And you can't even see it or acknowledge it. It's like, oh, they're just crazy. Is it? Because Helen, if I just went up and grabbed your arm and drug you out like he did to me, I guarantee you there would be guns drawn and I would probably be shot. Yeah. But Gonzalez is still here, wherever he's at. He is a threat to the community. If he can do that to a woman, be happy about it like he conquered me and got off. While I'm pleading. It's despicable. And all of you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
Your time is up. Next speaker. Your continued outbursts are disrupting the conduct of the meeting. Please stop. Your continued outbursts are disrupting the conduct of the meeting. Please stop. You're doing this intentionally to create a confrontation so you can go in the same situation. Audra, please stop talking and sit down, or you will be removed again. This is your second warning. Your continued outburst beyond your time. You had your time. Your time has expired. You are disrupting the conduct of the meeting. This is your third warning. Your conducts are disrupting the functioning of the meeting. The board will stand in brief recess while Ms. Morgan is removed from the chamber.
Thank you. Do a final call for the remaining speakers. Blair Overstreet, Michael Brando, Gretchen Newsom, Fernando Lopez, and Lucille Lynch.
Hello. Hi. It's good to see you. I know it's been a long day. I hope that this is the comment that sticks in your head, the positivity and the thanks that I want to give today. My name is Blair Overstreet. I'm a coalition organizer at CPI, Center on Policy Initiatives for the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. And on his last day as chair of Board of Supervisors, we would like to thank Supervisor Nathan Fletcher for his dedication and work at the county thus far. For many years, members of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition have advocated for equity, for programs and policies that help working families thrive, and for having a real voice in our county government, especially for those often excluded. Supervisor Fletcher has listened to those community priorities and has worked with impacted communities and advocates to help develop solutions. One example is his role in championing the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement. CPI, worker advocates, and other ISDF partners have long fought for the county to create an office that monitors and protects the rights of workers. This is just one demonstration of how Supervisor Fletcher, along with the other new members of this board, has changed this county in ways that, if maintained and built upon, could benefit our community for many years to come. Supervisor Fletcher, Nathan, as you step down as chair of the board, despite all the things you've heard in this room many, many times, please know that we see you, we appreciate your hard work and your commitment to working families. Congratulations, Chair-elect Vargas. We know that you will continue to move this county forward through bold leadership and a commitment to working families. And we really look forward to working with you in this role and with the other supervisors to make our county a more equitable and inclusive one. So thank you all for your service to the county and to the people of San Diego County. Thank you.
We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone.
Barbara Gordon. As a public health advocate, I wanted to recognize President Biden, who has proclaimed December 2022 as National Impaired Driving Prevention Month. The president urged all Americans to make responsible decisions and take appropriate measures to prevent impaired driving. During the holiday season, many of us look forward to getting together with friends and family. Unfortunately, holidays can also be a dangerous time for alcohol and drug-related traffic incidents, especially with our young people. Over 10,000 Americans' lives are lost to drug and drunk impaired driving each year, accounting for nearly a third of all traffic deaths. In 2019, some 11% of Americans drove under the influence, including a staggering 19.6% of people whose ages were 21 to 25. Because of impaired driving, far too many families are left with their world changed forever. Far too many passengers and pedestrians see their lives destroyed by someone else's bad decision. We all need to work towards reducing substance use disorder, raising awareness of the dangers of impaired driving, and invest in policies that can help prevent crashes, injuries, and deaths. I urge the board to look for solutions that will reduce substance abuse and raise awareness within our community on the dangers of impaired driving. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Originally, when I started talking at these meetings, we were like a group of people who tried to convince you guys to do something reasonable. But trying to reason with you or talk to you guys is like talking to a brick wall. What I found out, it goes so far beyond. I mean, there's every aspect of our life: stealing properties, putting people in houses or cabins, and hiring 1,500 people. It just blows my mind. for the told me that the people at the levels were talking to demons or Satan, and I thought that they were ridiculous, but now the story I'm starting to believe in that. So that we have on our board, supervisors is the in like a county employee or a senator or a contractor, they wouldn't get paid. And is he going to get money taken off his paycheck? You know, it's kind of like a middle finger up to the people who voted for him to just act and not show up to the board meetings. I mean, that's terrible. You guys break all kinds of laws. You break your environmental laws when you take retardant in unincorporated areas down. You're spraying poisonous vaccines around. You're bringing free labs to San Diego County. This is like an absolute nightmare that we can't wake up. This is awful.
We'll now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon. My name is Diane Grace, and I am here as a concerned parent and grandparent regarding marijuana use in young adults. Recently, Johnny's Ambassadors, a national group dedicated to informing parents about the severe problems associated with high-potency THC marijuana products, in their weekly newsletter talked about marijuana use during the fragile adolescent years. The founder of Johnny's Ambassador, Laura Stack, mother of Johnny, speaks widely on this subject, most recently on the Dr. Phil Show. Johnny died 3 years ago at the age of 19. Unfortunately, by the time Johnny was 14, he started dabbing high THC concentrated products. In this week's newsletter, she speaks of how much misinformation is available to elementary age and middle school students that create an impression that marijuana is harmless. The letter was titled, "At what age should children start learning about marijuana?" She wrote, "I recommend you begin marijuana education no later than age 10 and significantly younger possible. Middle school is often the age of initiation into marijuana use." When she spoke at one high school recently, one student asked her, "But why aren't you at the middle schools instead of here? Many here are already using." She recently was asked by a community coalition leader to create K through 5th grade flyers for 3rd graders who were bringing marijuana edibles to school. So the earlier you start, the better. Our parents have to swim against the tide of the billboards, promotion, online ads, and marijuana storefronts around them, which imply that drug use is okay.
Now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon, my name is Mark Wilcox. I've been following the supervisor's consideration of marijuana businesses where I live. I've worked on behalf of young adults to safeguard their passage to productive adulthood for decades. As a father of young adult children and grandparent to teenage grandchildren, I called in today to express my grave concern that marijuana businesses in our rural neighborhoods would be a very unfortunate and irresponsible move in 2023. Major media outlets continue to report that marijuana and hallucinogen use in past year by young adults ages 19 to 30 years old increased in 2021 in worrisome numbers compared to 5 and 10 years ago. Both hallucinogens and high-potency THC marijuana products have a probability to short-circuit the brain's capacity to make executive decisions. As the National Institute of Drug Abuse Director, Dr. Nora Volkow, MD, recently commented regarding this unfortunate increase in use, quote, "Young adults are in a critical life stage, and it is crucial to support the new generations for success in our policies," end quote. Now is not a good time for our young adults to experience the enticing advertising and predatory marketing and promotions that will come from having marijuana businesses in our communities. Let's start here and now to stop the rising tide of drug abuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Eleanor, I was going to talk about this scam with COVID and about why people are not connecting the dots to how all these people are dying suddenly and mysteriously. But more importantly, it's time to talk about this brutal assault on Audra. According to Sheriff William Gore, a relationship of trust and confidence between the members of the San Diego County Sheriff's Department and the community is essential for effective law enforcement. Well, how can that happen when you get thugs like the sheriffs who are working at the County Board of Supervisors viciously assaulting a person who is peaceful, who is tiny, and who is a woman? If she were a woman of color, then it would be called racial injustice and social inequity. But because it's Audra Morgan who gets under Nathan Fletcher's skin, that gives the sheriff's carte blanche to beat her up. This is absolutely disgusting. Shame on Sheriff Gonzalez, and shame on all the other sheriffs who stood by doing nothing, and shame on our Board of Supervisors for condoning this thuggish behavior. So, lastly, I want to read a poem which I'm sure has been heard before. Just remember, Audra is fighting for all of us, whether or not you agree with her. Listen to the poem. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. When the Board of Supervisors continues doing this under the guise of social justice and racial equity, and they come for you, you will wish that you had stood up for Audra. It is absolutely disgusting that the Board of Supervisors condones this.
Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, this is Cynthia. Yeah, I actually just ditto to everything Eleanor just said. She also mentioned about, these days are really long, and you guys already have your mind made up for every agenda item. And so I do have a question. How is this voted on unanimously if Jim isn't present? I don't know how that works. I'm just honestly asking. And this pertains also to the ridiculousness that happened to Audra. Because, listen, with all the buzzwords you guys use, with all the asininity that flies out of everyone's mouths, social justice, inequity, sustainability, if she was gay, a tranny, lesbian, black, brown, Asian, that wouldn't have happened to her, okay? That would not have happened to her. So all the stuff that you guys say, it's absolute hypocrisy. And I get that you don't like her delivery. You don't like her style. You don't agree with her. And you know what? I wouldn't want to see that happen to any of you, because the last time I checked, this is still America, and it's shameful. This goes back also to the Second Amendment. I'm going to tie this in, because we have these sheriffs that don't know a hole from the ground, that do not know their Constitution and the oath that they took. They do not honor it, but yet they have weapons to protect your asses. And I heard two women call earlier today championing, Nathan, for taking care of us with gun safety. Anytime the government wants to get in there and keep you safe, it's the opposite. Our rights come from our Creator, not from any elected official. So I demand an apology to Audra. You need to apologize to her. That was disgusting. This, again, is America. You better keep it that way, because there's a big-ass lawsuit coming.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Peggy Walker, thank you. As a health advocate, I want to address marijuana tax revenue, which is touted as a primary justification for marijuana commercialization. Year-end analysis, however, shows pot taxes do not meet the social costs of use, often fail to meet overly enthusiastic projections, and are in decline. A new report just released from the California Legislative Analyst's Office shows marijuana tax revenues, in fact, have declined for 5 straight quarters. Tax revenues at $221 million in quarter one of 2021 dropped 47% to $128 million in quarter two of 2022. That's a loss of $93 million. The decline is due in part to elimination of the cultivation tax, but at the same time, retail excise tax revenue declined at the fastest rate in 5 years, according to the LAO. Reasons include the conjecture that some legal businesses may not be appropriately reporting all sales, and some selling excess product unreported on the black market. Further, a recent study shows that for every $1 of marijuana tax received, $4 is spent on medical and treatment costs, as ER, poison control cases, and need for mental health treatment soars. This should give us pause to question if the pot experiment and pot taxes are not providing anticipated return and are costing more than social costs like medical and mental health treatment, is commercialization really worthwhile? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Truth. At the November 15th Truth meeting, complete injustice took place. I called it out in that meeting, but the KUSI full video revealed sheriff brutality. Nathan couldn't even count to 3. And that weak and inept sheriff in Gonzalez put his full body weight onto Audra and shoved her head into the ground with his elbow. He didn't even know how to apply handcuffs. While deputies Jay Ramos, B. Ear, A. Angulo, and 5 others turned their backs in cowardice. Nathan's goons at best, thugs at worst. You're all guilty, and especially you, Nathan, for directly threatening the same situation to Audra tonight and having the cameras cut.
Audra, your outbursts are disrupting the conduct of the meeting. Your first warning. Third warning. Audra, this is your third warning. Please escort Audra Morgan out of the chamber. You're hurting her. You guys know better.
He said when people are in our custody, we have a moral obligation to make sure that they don't die.
And you were at the hospital. Tell us what happened. So I went and had a CAT scan and some x-rays, and so I have a concussion and some chest and back injuries. But in addition to that, like I have a dislocated rib in my wrist. I mean, I have bruising on the bottom of my feet. I'm like finding areas all over the place that are just in pain from what he did. I mean, he's a very large man doing that to a woman.
And this is what happened in the George Floyd incident. This was horrible, what happened back there. And I think it set this country back 40, 50, 60 years in terms of police trust. So every day, every contact, our people have to realize, treat a person like a human being. Treat them like they were your mother, your grandma, your brother, your sister, your wife. As a department, we can't allow misconduct. It has to be dealt with quickly. You can't sweep something bad that happens under the table.
That's right. It's the responsibility of the county and the sheriff to do the moral right thing. History will remember or never forget. It's documented. Not one more. Not one more. Not one more.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, this is Kevin Stevenson, and I'd just like to point out some hypocrisy. So, of course, the main topic in non-agenda has been the whole incident with Audra Morgan last month. And let me make this very clear. Despite my differences in terms of ideology with Audra, despite all the times that she and her cronies have threatened violence against our elected officials, she did not deserve to get harassed by that sheriff. Now, let me make very clear that she also should not have been screaming and interrupting disrupting that truth forum, or the forum last month. So to be clear, she did not deserve to get a concussion. She did not deserve to be injured. But let's make something very clear. The Back the Blue crowd only has a problem with police and sheriff brutality when one of their own get brutalized. To go against what that previous speaker said, if this was a black person, a transgender person, no, it has been happening to them. And you know what? You guys would be cheering it on because your entire ideology screams Back the Blue, they can do no wrong, and you guys only criticize police brutality when a right-winger gets brutalized. I'm ACAB. All cops are bastards. I'm consistent. I am against violence against the people no matter what. But I'm just calling out the inconsistencies in the people who are speaking out about this. So let's just be very clear and set the record straight that you guys don't actually care about holding the supervisors accountable. You're just upset that one of your own.
We'll hear from the final caller.
Good evening, Chair Fletcher and County Board of Supervisors. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a parent and a youth group mentor. And today I would like to share some information with you regarding high-potency THC and the negative impacts that it can have on youth in our communities. I'd like to share with you a very concerning headline out of Los Angeles. A middle school in Van Nuys experienced a terrifying incident in which 10 students ages 12 to 14 displayed symptoms linked to a drug overdose while at school. Several of those students were rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with an overdose induced by the consumption of high-potency THC gummies. Although this is a headline we're reading out of LA, we have to anticipate that a tragic situation similar to this could happen here in San Diego County. The negative effects of THC on our young people are undeniable. It was described by classmates at Van Nuys Middle School that the students who overdosed were acting weird, tired, and high, enough for school officials to call 911 and take several of them to the hospital. These first signs of overdose can lead to more significant symptoms that can alter the adolescent brain. Whenever possible, I strongly encourage you to raise awareness of the high-potency THC epidemic we're seeing with young people. They are in desperate need of education, leading to prevention, stricter labeling of products, removing colorful billboards, implementing THC gaps, as well as prohibiting flavored marijuana products are critical to the health, safety, and welfare of youth. And I would encourage you to write these in to the marijuana policy you're currently writing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes a request for non-agenda public communication this afternoon.
With that, we stand adjourned.
The board will reconvene tomorrow for the planning and land use session of this meeting, December 14th, 2022 at 9 a.m.
He did. Malcolm S. College, we know what he did. Harriet Tubman, we know what she did.
Soon, this city of his creation had grown to where it took over most of his front yard and began